Chapter 5:17. And Sheng's personal strength was definitely one of the best at the epic stage, but even he couldn't approach the scorpion. It was just too fast. With a flap of its wings, it could easily fly hundreds of meters away. Even Zhou, who was using ghost steps, probably wouldn't be able to catch up to it easily. After continuously resolving the blood-colored text of wind, fire, and lightning, Sheng and company seemed to have found an opportunity to counterattack. With Sheng's order, the few officers released their strongest attack. Terrifying forces struck the scorpion. A sanguine light flashed on the scorpion's back as a huge blood-colored text appeared on its back. It was like a barrier that blocked their attacks. With a series of clanging sounds, Sheng and company's forces shattered, but the blood-colored barrier remained intact. And Tianzhua, who had been motionless all this while, finally moved. Flames rose from his body, transforming into a strange life soul. The life soul's entire body was wrapped in white armor. The armor was neither gold nor jade, looking more like it was carved from bone. There was also a blood-like cloak on his back. In his left hand was a slender bone saber covered in blood-colored patterns, and in his other hand was a spear made of bone. It wasn't a cold weapon spear, but a modern spear. That thing. Don't tell me it's a Gatling gun. Zhou looked at the weapon in the life soul's hand. The bone gun barrel was connected to the recoil. No matter how he looked at it, it looked like an ancient firearm often seen in movies. Just as Zhou was pondering over it, he heard a terrifying boom. He saw flames shoot out from the bone gun barrel as blood-colored bullets of light shot out like a storm. Bang! 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 The dense rain of bullets struck the scorpion's blood-colored text barrier, causing it to shake and flicker as though it would shatter at any moment. There was a constant buzzing sound as the bullets poured down like they were free. The scorpion's blood-colored text barrier was forcefully shattered. This was the first time Zhou had seen someone's life soul have a firearm. Furthermore, its offensive strength wasn't necessarily too strong. It could actually break through a mythical barrier. Although it was only one of the weaker mythical creatures, Zhou had relied on Ever-Victorious's characteristic to kill Medusa. His life soul alone wasn't that strong. The bullet hit the scorpion's body, instantly enraging it. The wings on its back opened up, and blood runes flashed on its wings. Its entire body was covered in blood runes, and the blood runes on the tip of its tail were especially terrifying. The blood runes revolved around the scorpion's body, blocking the rain of bullets. The bullets collided with the blood text, creating a terrifying shockwave that destroyed the surrounding forest. Activate the halo. And Sheng instructed the officers. Two of the officers' companion beasts shimmered with light as they enveloped Tianzhua, causing Tianzhua and his life soul to be covered in 2 layers of strange light. The Gatling's bombardment became even more ferocious as the number of bullets became denser and more powerful. Curse activated. When Sheng issued the order, he also used an essence energy skill, producing a strange gray smoke that enveloped the scorpion. The other officers also used all sorts of powers. These powers didn't have any lethality, but they had a slight effect on the scorpion. Boom! The scorpion was enraged by the Gatling's bombardment. The blood-colored text surrounding its body emitted a terrifying sanguine glow. Almost instantly, the sanguine glow devoured everything nearby. Retreat. And Sheng had already issued the order before the blood text exploded. All the officers retreated with Sheng very tacitly. Zhou also retreated with them, but he realized that only Tianzhua didn't retreat. The expanding sanguine glow was like a blood-colored black hole that devoured everything nearby. As for Tianzhua, he was already standing at the edge of the bloody hole and was about to be devoured. Just as Zhou was frowning, he suddenly saw Tianzhua's life soul vanish. A white bone armor and a blood-colored cloak appeared on Tianzhua's body. He held a bone saber in one hand and a bone gatling in the other. Just as the sanguine glow was about to devour him, a black shadow flew out from his body and landed on the bone saber. Immediately, demonic black flames rose from the bone saber. And Tianzua raised the bone saber and slashed at the sanguine glow in front of him. He forcefully cleaved open a crack in the sanguine glow as he charged in. Guns and cannons rumbled as saber flames flickered. And Tianzua and the scorpion fought crazily. The madness was completely different from the Tianzua he usually saw. As for Sheng and company, they constantly used all sorts of essence energy skills from behind. They were either attacking Tianzua or the scorpion. The officers with the unique Ice Fox life soul and the ability to restrain slow text were the busiest. They needed to constantly deliver their strength to ensure that the area Tianzua was in wasn't affected by the power of slow text. Bam! Scorpion's body was sent flying by the bone knife in Tianzua's hand. Tianzua raised the Gatling gun backhandedly, and the black flames on the bone knife were instantly transferred to the bone Gatling gun, causing the bone Gatling gun to be wrapped in black flames. Bang! Bang! Bullets with black flames roared as they blasted at the scorpion in midair, causing its body to constantly distort and rise in the air. Finally, its carapace was cracked by the bullets as more and more bullets shot into its flesh. The black flames on them also burned its flesh and bones. Boom! The blood patterns on the scorpion's body shattered as they fell like glass. It's done! And Sheng was overjoyed. Without the protection of the blood patterns, the torrential bullets struck the scorpion's body without restraint, shattering its flesh and carapace as blood splattered out. Just as the scorpion's body was about to explode, a sanguine glow suddenly erupted from its abdomen. A strange blood rune appeared as a sanguine color rapidly spread across the scorpion's body. Bam! The sanguine glow exploded as its carapace and flesh transformed into terrifying energy that exploded. The powerful force forced Tianzua to retreat temporarily. At the same time as the explosion, a sanguine beam of light flew towards White Cloud Mountain at an unbelievable speed. Tianzua's figure flashed as he chased up White Cloud Mountain. Damn it, that fellow actually has such a move! And Sheng cursed softly as he led his men in pursuit. When they caught up to Tianzua, they realized that Tianzua was standing in front of a mountain gate. They didn't see the scorpion that had self-destructed. Love letter escaped into Jade Emperor Peak? And Sheng had roughly guessed what was going on. And Tianzua nodded slightly. It's all for naught. Let's return. Although they knew that the scorpion was already on its last legs, and Sheng could kill it himself as long as they could find it, even without Tianzua's help. However, no one dared to enter Jade Emperor Peak. No matter how strong they were, entering would only result in death. Even Tianzua could only return without success. Although mythical creatures were precious, they couldn't be exchanged for with their lives. Chapter 518. Zhou used Truth Listener to listen into the mountain entrance and found it dead silent. He couldn't hear anything, as though the particles inside were motionless. There were no vibrations from the flow. There's indeed something terrifying on Jade Emperor Peak. However, isn't this a pity? After preparing for so long, I ended up failing at the last moment. Zhou secretly felt pity for Sheng. If a mythical companion egg dropped, Sheng's strength would definitely improve greatly. It would be much safer for him to carry out missions in the future. Along the way, Zhou didn't find the tiny palm symbol. Although Truth Listener's ability couldn't hear drawings, it could hear the engravings. If there was a tiny palm symbol, he should have heard it. And Tianzua was a decisive person. Since there was no chance, he didn't hesitate and ordered Sheng and the officers to leave White Cloud Mountain. Just as they were about to leave, they suddenly heard a tragic cry coming from Jade Emperor Peak. It sounded like the final sorrowful cry of a creature on its deathbed. Its love letter. It died less than 20 meters away from Jade Emperor Peak. It even dropped a companion egg, an officer suddenly shouted. How do you know? And Tianzua asked. I can't hear it from the sound, but I can see it with my eyes. It's inside. It's a companion egg the size of a soccer ball. It's completely white and has blood-colored text on it. The officer used his hearing in the beginning, but he couldn't hear anything. As he was somewhat indignant, he thought that it would be fine to take a peek. He lifted his balaclava and looked inside. He actually saw the companion egg. And Tianzua was also using his hearing, so he couldn't see what was happening inside. He turned to Ensheng and asked, "Ensheng?" This was because Ensheng's big-eyed companion beast gave him visual abilities. If there really was one, Ensheng should have been the first to see it, but Ensheng hadn't said anything. 20 meters is also inside Jade Emperor Peak. It's no different from 200 meters or 2,000 meters, Ensheng answered. He was clearly the first person to discover the blood scorpion, but he didn't say anything. Even though it was right in front of him, he still chose to give up. With that said, Ensheng said to the officer, "Old He, put on your balaclava. Do you have a death wish?" "Overseer, adjutant, why don't we give it another try? It's less than 20 meters inside. Perhaps there's a way to get the companion egg out." "That's a mythical companion egg," the officer said indignantly to Tianzua and Ensheng as he put on his balaclava. "Ah Sheng is right. Even 2 centimeters is inside Jade Emperor Peak, much less 20 meters, Tianzua said. "Overseer, let's give it a try with companion beasts. At most, we'll sacrifice a few more companion beasts. We can still afford it." The officers felt that it was a pity to leave. "There's no need. Have we done enough? Jade Emperor Peak can't be entered, be it humans or companion beasts." Ah Sheng firmly objected. "Adjutant An's lion dozen companion. As to Emperor as he say, to Ao is that companion, I, Commander as he as I say. We can. If Adjutant and can have a mythical pet, it will be a huge improvement for the Sunset Army. In the future, many of our brothers will die when we carry out missions," one of the officers said. "Then let's give it a try," Tianzua said. "Thank you, Overseer." The officer was overjoyed. "Overseer." And Sheng still wanted to stop him. "If you don't let them give it a try, they won't be satisfied. Just remember it." And Tianzua stopped Sheng from continuing. As they spoke, Zhou circled the vicinity of the mountain gate, hoping to see if there was a tiny palm symbol nearby. He didn't hold much hope because the tiny palm symbol was typically engraved in a more conspicuous place. There wasn't one on the mountain gate, so the possibility of it being there was relatively low. However, he did not expect to find a small palm symbol on a rock on the east side of the mountain gate. The small palm symbol was engraved on a mountain rock about the height of a person. It was unknown what color the mountain rock was, and there was nothing special about its shape. The small palm symbol carved on it was a small hand holding a rock that looked like a small mountain. It was exactly the same as the small palm symbol carved on the rock. He took out his phone and took a picture of the tiny palm symbol. The phone quickly locked onto the symbol and entered the download interface. On the other side, the officer had already summoned a moon-white rhinoceros. The rhinoceros looked very mighty and was much bigger than the average rhinoceros. It was even bigger than an adult elephant. Its body suffused a jade glow as though its body was enveloped by moonlight. Old He stopped trying. "It's a pity to destroy such a precious companion beast like the evil warding spirit rhinoceros," Sheng said with a sigh. "It's fine. It's less than 20 meters away. It's just a start for the evil warding spirit rhinoceros." However, Old He was very determined. When the evil warding spirit rhinoceros arrived in front of the stone door, Old He gave the order. The evil warding spirit rhinoceros suddenly moved like a heavy tank at full throttle. It charged into the mountain gate and headed for the spot where the companion egg had fallen. The moment the evil warding spirit rhinoceros entered the mountain gate, Zhou couldn't hear its voice. Since there wasn't any immortal palace phenomenon appearing, he didn't need to look into the clouds. It shouldn't be a problem to just look at the situation inside the mountain gate. He lifted the hood a little, allowing himself to see the situation inside the mountain gate. He saw that the evil warding spirit rhinoceros had already charged 4 to 5 meters into the mountain gate. Furthermore, it was still charging rapidly. At that speed, the distance of 20 meters would probably be covered in a few seconds. Zhou also saw the companion egg. Indeed, it was less than 20 meters inside the mountain gate. Just as old he had said, the jade-white egg had blood-colored patterns on it. There was also a pile of blood-colored powder on the ground. It was likely formed after the blood scorpion died. Just as Zhou was sizing up the evil warding spirit rhinoceros, he saw a terrifying scene. After the gigantic rhinoceros rushed into the mountain gate, its body turned into jade. It didn't go far, at most 10 meters, before it turned into a lifeless jade statue and fell to the ground. Bam! After a loud bang, the evil warding spirit rhinoceros's body shattered into pieces of jade. Furthermore, the pieces of jade that landed on the ground were constantly disintegrating, becoming smaller and smaller. They were like fine sand, splitting again and again before finally turning into dust. Zhou couldn't help but shiver. He finally knew what was going on with the pile of blood-colored powder under the companion egg. Even the blood scorpion couldn't withstand the terrifying power of Jade Emperor Peak. It ended up in the same state as the evil warding spirit rhinoceros. As for the companion egg, it wasn't affected by the terrifying power. Ding! Zhou's phone upgrade download completed. He looked down and saw a black mountain-shaped icon on his phone screen. However, the name wasn't White Cloud Mountain, but Demon Suppression Mountain. Chapter 519. He clicked open the Demon Suppression Mountain dungeon and realized that the blood-colored avatar had appeared in front of the black rock. Beside it was White Cloud Mountain's entrance. Apart from the cartoonish design, the layout was the same as the real White Cloud Mountain. Zhou thought for a moment and attempted to get the blood-colored avatar to walk through the entrance. He wanted to see if Truth Listener's ability could withstand the terrifying power inside Jade Emperor Peak. However, it was useless. The power inside Jade Emperor Peak wasn't an evil power like a curse. The blood-colored avatar turned to dust after taking a few steps in. Zhou thought for a moment and dripped his blood to revive. He walked into Jade Emperor Peak again, but this time, he switched his primordial energy art to a Tao Sutra. His life providence naturally transformed into a Tao body and zero taboo. Just as the blood-colored avatar took half a step in, the zero taboo crystal in his consciousness lit up like a light bulb that had suddenly been lit up. It's useful. Zhou was delighted as he controlled the blood-colored avatar to continue walking forward. After taking a few steps, his body was fine. Cracks began to appear on the zero taboo crystal as though it was about to shatter. I really can't take it out. In front of the mountain entrance, he wore a look of disappointment. He wasn't feeling sorry for the death of his evil warding spirit rhinoceros, but because he couldn't take out the companion egg for ensuring. With the overseer around, we will have plenty of opportunities to kill mythical creatures in the future. Mythical companion beasts will appear sooner or later, Xing said. He felt sorry for the death of the evil warding spirit rhinoceros. It was one of the few epic companion beasts that could ward off evil. It was a pity that it was gone just like that. Let's go. And Tianzui gave the order again. This time, no one said a word. Although they were unwilling to give up the mythical companion egg in front of them, they had no choice but to leave. Xing, let me give it a try. Perhaps I can take it out, Zhou said as he walked over. If the companion egg was in Tianzui's, Zhou wouldn't have stepped forward. He might even have waited for them to leave before sneaking back to take the companion egg away. However, the companion egg was for Xing, so Zhou felt that he should help him. Xing had really helped him too much and had gone through thick and thin with him. He had plenty of chances to obtain mythical companion eggs in the future, but he probably wouldn't meet many people who would risk their lives to accompany him at critical moments like this in his entire life. Young Master One, if you want to use a mythical companion beast to enter to obtain a companion egg, there's no need to try again. Love Letter is also at the mythical stage. It can't withstand the power of Jade Emperor Peak, and Xing said. It's very simple to take out a companion egg. There's no need to use a mythical companion beast. As Zhou spoke, he had already walked to the mountain entrance. He deliberately spoke in a relaxed manner and didn't mention that he was going to enter. This was because he knew very well that if he said that he wanted to enter, Xing would definitely stop him. He wouldn't let him take the risk. Young Master One, what solution do you have? Xing asked. And Tianzhua and the few officers also looked at Zhou. They also wanted to know if Zhou really had a way to take out a companion egg. Lao He looked at Zhou and said, Young Master One, if you have a way to take out a companion egg, just say the word in the future. Lao He will be on call. I won't even frown if I have to climb a mountain of blades or a sea of flames. And Xing had saved the lives of Lao He's family, so Lao He had always treated Xing's matters as his own. I'll remember that. As Zhou spoke, he looked into the mountain entrance. And Tianzhua and company imagined that he was going to summon a companion beast, but to their surprise, Zhou suddenly took a step forward and walked into the mountain entrance. No. And Xing was alarmed as he rushed towards the mountain entrance. However, someone was faster than him. With a flash, he arrived in front of the mountain entrance and reached out to grab Zhou. However, he was still a step too slow. Zhou had already rushed into the mountain entrance. When Xing rushed to the mountain entrance, he was held back by Tianzhua, who had arrived earlier. He didn't let him chase after Zhou. Look carefully. His body isn't affected. At some point in time, Tianzhua had already taken off his balaclava. He looked at Zhou inside the stone door and said to Xing in a deep voice. Lao He and company were alarmed. They originally imagined that Zhou would use a special companion beast to give it a try, but they never expected him to walk in himself. And Xing stood outside the stone door and looked at Zhou. He quickly walked towards the companion egg at an astonishing speed. More importantly, his body didn't disintegrate like the evil warding spirit rhinoceros. Zhou's body landed in front of the companion egg like a wisp of smoke. With a hook of his hand, he held the companion egg in his hand before turning around and retreating. As he advanced and retreated, he was swift and elegant, like an unsheathed saber. With a flash of the saber beam, it returned to its sheath before one could see what the saber looked like. When Zhou returned to the mountain entrance with the blood scorpion companion egg in hand, Lao He and company snapped out of their daze. They looked at Zhou, who was standing in front of them with the companion egg in hand, and were momentarily speechless. Young Master One, you were too rash. And Xing sized up Zhou's body and heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that there was nothing amiss with his body. Don't worry. I won't do anything I'm not confident in. Zhou threw the companion egg to Xing. Thank you, young Master One. And Xing caught the companion egg and said with a smile. You will pay the price sooner or later if you don't consider the consequences. Put on your balaclavas. Let's go down the mountain, and Tianzhua said coldly. He put on his balaclavas and turned to head down the mountain. Everyone hurriedly put on their balaclavas and followed Tianzhua down the mountain. Ah Xing, is the Jade Rabbit lunar worship on that mountain peak? Zhou asked Xing when they reached a fork in the road halfway up the mountain. It's over there. I'll take you there, Xing said. Lao He also said, Young Master One, if you want to see it, I'll take you there. However, it's just a rock. There's nothing to see. There's no need. There's no danger there anyway. I want to take a look myself. You guys go back first, Zhou said as he walked up the mountain path. And Xing didn't insist on going with him. Zhou could even escape unscathed from Jade Emperor Peak, so there was naturally no danger outside. Adjutant N, this young Master One is simply godly. He can actually enter and exit Jade Emperor Peak safely. He's just too powerful. Is he really still in school? Lao he said to Enshing as he watched Zhou Wen's back disappear on the mountain path. Don't you know which family young Master Wen is from? How can someone who can be doted on by Madame not be strong? As Enshing spoke, he glanced at Entienzhua with his large eyes. Unfortunately, he couldn't see Entienzhua's expression through the balaclavas. That's true. Young Master Wen is also Madame Lan's son. It's only right that he's strong, Lao he said with a smile. Chapter 520. Zhou Wen walked all the way to the mountain peak where the Jade Rabbit lunar prayer stone was. Although Zero Taboo seemed to have the ability to restrain White Cloud Mountain's taboo, it was best to be careful. Zhou Wen still wore his balaclava and only used Truth Listener's ability to scout. If he saw the Immortal Palace phenomenon and Zero Taboo didn't work, wouldn't he die an unjust death? There were indeed very few creatures on White Cloud Mountain. Zhou Wen walked all the way to the mountain peak, but he didn't encounter a single one. When he reached the top of the mountain, Zhou Wen finally saw the legendary Moon Prayer Jade Rabbit Stone. Perhaps it was because Zhou Wen's imagination wasn't good, but no matter how he looked at it, it didn't look like a rabbit. The Dharch said that the item is under this stone, but this stone seems to be connected to the mountain peak, right? Do I have to dig it open? Zhou Wen circled the Moon Rabbit Stone but didn't discover the good stuff the Dharch had mentioned. Although it wasn't good to destroy the natural scenery, Zhou Wen couldn't be bothered anymore. He summoned Six-Winged Guardian Dragon and got it to push the Moon Rabbit Stone away to see if there was anything underneath. Six-Winged Guardian Dragon had 80 strength. With the augmentation of an Essence Energy skill, it could even snap a mountain peak, much less a rock. However, its two front claws grabbed the Moon Rabbit Stone and exerted all its strength, but it failed to move the Moon Rabbit Stone at all. Zhou Wen couldn't help but be alarmed. With 6 wings strength, even a piece of titanium alloy should have been snapped, much less a rock. Zhou Wen made 6-Winged stop. He probably wouldn't be able to move the Moon Rabbit Stone with brute force. Zhou Wen studied how to deal with the Moon Rabbit Stone on the mountain peak, but after using many methods, he failed to move it at all. All he could do was leave White Cloud Mountain and return to the encampment. He planned on contacting the Dharch and asking her how to retrieve the item under the Moon Rabbit Stone. After Zhou Wen returned to the encampment, Lao He warmly welcomed him in and told him that there were still matters to be dealt with in Luoyang. And Sheng and Entienzhua had already left. They had left a message for Zhou Wen to drive him back if he wanted to return. On the rugged mountain road, Enshing fiddled with his phone as he drove. For him, multitasking wasn't difficult. Driving and playing games didn't conflict. Most people shouldn't do that when they were driving. It was easy to get into an accident and harm oneself and others. The scene that appeared on Enshing's phone screen was the game that Zhou Wen had invested in Huangji. He held the phone in one hand as his fingers moved rapidly. It was no different from others using 2 hands, and it was even more agile. The character in the game used all sorts of fancy moves and skills to defeat the demon soldiers and demon generals. Why aren't you driving properly? What are you doing there? Entienzhua, who was sitting in the back with his eyes closed, suddenly said. I downloaded the game that Zhou Wen and company made and gave it a try. It's really not bad. The sense of attack and skills are very good. The parameters are also very close to reality, especially those demon soldiers and demon generals. Their behavior patterns and skills are identical to reality. After playing this game, if I encounter demon soldiers and demon generals in reality, I will know how to deal with them. This game is indeed not bad. From the looks of it, young Master Wen isn't just playing games, Enshing said as he played. It's just sensationalism. Watching videos can help you understand dimensional creatures better than playing games. I don't see him researching them every day. All he knows is to play games. The so-called understanding of dimensional creatures is just an excuse to have fun, Entienzhua said. Enshing defended Zhou Wen. it's still a little different. Watching videos can only tell what abilities dimensional creatures have. Ordinary people can't know what skills can be used to deal with them just by watching. However, in the game, you can try using various skills to fight dimensional creatures. You can then know which skills are effective against them. Furthermore, through in-game combat, it's easier to remember the timing of the various skills of dimensional creatures. This game is an advanced strategy. It would be even better if it could be made into a holographic game. I realize that ever since you went out with Zhouwen a few times, you've become more and more reasonable, Tianzhua said with a cold expression. Overseer, you're right. I was wrong. This game is just a distraction. It's useless, Xing hurriedly said. You've even learned to pay lip service. Indeed, one takes on the color of one's company. Give me your phone, Tianzhua said coldly when he saw that Xing was still playing. I was wrong, all right? Xing hurriedly put away his phone. I told you to give me your phone, Tianzhua said expressionlessly as he stared at Xing through the rearview mirror. Xing helplessly handed the phone to Tianzhua, who was sitting behind. Tianzhua reached out to take the phone and glared at Xing. Drive properly. If you continue messing around, I'll punish you by sending you to guard Chess Mountain. Xing responded and continued driving. He didn't dare do anything else. Tianzhua closed his eyes to rest for a while, but he had a nagging feeling that something was bothering him. After a while, Tianzhua opened his eyes again and picked up the phone beside him. After switching it on, his gaze landed on a program icon named Dimension. The corners of Tianzhua's eyes twitched slightly as he reached out to pull the curtains between the front and back seats. Then, he said to Xing, I'll rest for a while. Don't disturb me. Got it, Overseer, Xing said. Tianzhua held the phone and switched off the sound. Then, he clicked on an icon. Soon, an ink-style interface appeared on the phone screen. Zhouwen rested in the encampment. There was a signal in the encampment. He sent a message to the Dharch, but he didn't receive a reply after waiting for a few hours. Just as Zhouwen wondered if the Dharch was deliberately not replying to him, a message finally came. Zhouwen opened it and saw that it was from the Dharch. To practice a divine art, one must first castrate oneself. When Zhouwen saw the content of the message, countless question marks immediately surfaced in his mind. Then, he sent a row of question marks over. I sent it to the wrong person. It was sent to someone else. To obtain the treasure, one must wait for the moon to rise. This time, the Dharch replied very quickly. So I have to wait for the moon to rise to obtain the treasure under the moon rabbit stone. Zhouwen was enlightened, but he suddenly felt that something was amiss. The Dharch, you said that you sent it to the wrong person. Then who were you planning on sending that sentence to? Zhouwen's expression turned odd. Since the Dharch could use her phone to go online, it wasn't strange that she could add others as friends. What was strange was why she had sent such a message to the other party. A fellow who wants to learn a divine art. I think his name is John Cape, the Dharch replied. John Cape. Zhouwen naturally wouldn't forget this fellow. After all, it was because of Liz and John that he and the Cape family had become irreconcilable. Chapter 521. Zhouwen originally wanted to ask what the Dharch was doing, but the Dharch didn't reply to his message. All he could do was temporarily put the matter aside. In the afternoon, Zhouwen arrived in front of the Jade Rabbit lunar prayer stone again and waited for the moon to rise from the east. However, there was a problem. The Dharch said that he had to push the moon rabbit stone when the moon rose. Although Truth Listener was very powerful and could hear even the tiniest sounds, it couldn't tell if the moon had risen or not. If Truth Listener advanced further in the future and advanced to the mythical stage, it might be able to hear things at a deeper level. For example, the sound of electrons spinning and photons flowing. When that happened, it would be possible to use its hearing to determine if the moon had risen. However, he was definitely unable to do it now. After some hesitation, Zhou Wen switched his essence energy art to Tao Sutra before taking off his balaclava. Zhou Wen estimated the time. The moon was about to rise. If he took a look, he wouldn't be so unlucky as to see the Immortal Palace phenomenon, right? However, even if he saw the Immortal Palace phenomenon, it wouldn't be easy for him to die with the zero taboo life soul. While waiting for the sun to set in the encampment, Zhou Wen studied his zero taboo life soul. After entering and exiting White Cloud Mountain's Jade Emperor Peak and other dimensional zones a few times, he discovered some clues. Zero taboo was somewhat different from Truth Listener's evil nullification. When evil nullification was effective, it was due to man-made curses. As for zero taboo, it wasn't very useful against those powers. According to Zhou Wen's judgment, it was likely a power of the worldly laws. For example, White Cloud Mountain's Jade Emperor Peak, Small Buddha Temple, or say Gasakai's Withering Life and Death. Those were all unreasonable powers because that was how the rules were. Zero taboo was very useful in this aspect. However, its effects and evil nullification were indeed difficult to distinguish. There was a middle ground between the two. Zhou Wen was still studying it, so he didn't have a thorough understanding of zero taboo. He was still in the guessing stage. However, zero taboo wasn't really without any taboos. It could only last about 10 seconds in White Cloud Mountain's Jade Emperor Peak. Any longer and the zero taboo life soul would explode from the pressure. In Small Buddha Temple, as long as they didn't enter the temple hall, they would be fine. But once they entered the temple hall, zero taboo could only last for about 10 seconds. Although the Immortal Palace phenomenon was terrifying, Zhou Wen guessed that it wouldn't be of much use to him. Zero taboo and evil nullification would more or less have some effect. After removing the balaclava, Zhou Wen looked east. Although the sun and moon weren't in the sky wasn't too dark because the sun had just set and there was still some afterglow. As far as the eye could see, all he could see was a sea of white clouds. Occasionally, a few mountain peaks peeked out of the sea of clouds, like a few black islands in a white sea. The scene was indeed as beautiful as a fairyland. What a pity! Not many people have the pleasure of enjoying such a beautiful scene. If this was before the dimensional storms, this place would probably be packed to the brim with tourists. Zhou Wen suddenly felt that the dimensional storms weren't necessarily a bad thing. If there were tourists chattering everywhere, no matter how beautiful the scenery was, it would be discounted. Without seeing the Immortal Palace appear, Zhou Wen estimated that the moon would rise soon. He decided not to wear the balaclava and sat there to watch the sea of clouds. On the mountain peaks above the sea of clouds, he could see some ancient buildings. However, those places weren't places he could go to casually. Zhou Wen temporarily only admired them. In less than 2 minutes, he saw a crescent moon slowly float out from the edge of the sea of clouds. The moonlight wasn't strong, nor was it bright. It was just that soft and weak. Zhou Wen was just about to push the moon rabbit stone when a white jade-like immortal palace appeared at the spot where the crescent moon rose. Pavilions, jade halls, heavenly altars, and beautiful and elegant immortal palaces appeared above the sea of clouds. He could even see fairies flying among them. He could even faintly hear singing coming from the Immortal Palace. An Immortal Palace phenomenon. Zhou Wen was alarmed. The zero taboo life soul had already lit up ahead of his thoughts. Clearly, it had reacted to the Immortal Palace phenomenon. The intensity of zero taboo's reaction was no less than when he entered Jade Emperor Peak. Zhou Wen took a careful look before closing his eyes and pulling down the balaclava. The glowing zero taboo life soul also darkened in his consciousness. Thankfully, my guess was right. Zero taboo seems to be effective against all sorts of taboo powers in Dimensional Zone. The Immortal Palace phenomenon he had just seen surfaced in Zhou Wen's mind again. The Immortal Palace itself was very magnificent, but to Zhou Wen, it wasn't of much value. Instead, the dancing fairies gave Zhou Wen some insight. The fairy in Dragon Gate Grotto was only at the epic stage after all. Transcendent Flying Immortal was only an epic primordial energy skill. Although Zhou had constantly gained insight and creativity, making it an existence that transcended the epic stage, it was still inferior to a true mythical skill. Today, when he saw the figures of the fairies in the Immortal Palace, Zhou immediately gained new insight. Without a doubt, if those fairies really existed, they should be at the mythical stage. Ignoring the fairies' figures, Zhou reached out to push the moon rabbit stone while the moon had just risen. Although it was still very heavy, the moon rabbit stone actually moved a little under his strength. Overjoyed, Zhou pushed even harder, pushing the moon rabbit stone to the side bit by bit. Then, he realized that beneath the moon rabbit stone was a jade box embedded in a groove in the rock. Zhou reached out and took out the jade box. It was somewhat cold to the touch. He touched the groove again, and after confirming that there was nothing else, Zhou pushed the moon rabbit stone back. Putting the jade box into his pocket, Zhou planned on taking a look at what was inside the box when he returned. After all, he had already obtained the item, so he wasn't in a rush. He wanted to leave the mountain just like that, but he couldn't bear to do so. After some thought, Zhou pulled down the balaclava and looked at the rising moon in the east. The Immortal Palace phenomenon was still there. The Immortal Palaces floated above the sea of clouds, looking extremely real. It wasn't something an illusory mirage could compare with. The fairies danced between the Immortal Palaces, all of them graceful and elegant. They were many times more profound than the fairies he had seen in Dragon Gate Grotto. The zero taboo life soul kept emitting light. It felt like it wouldn't last more than a few seconds before it shattered. Zhou didn't dare take another look. Just as he was about to close his eyes after taking a few more looks, he suddenly saw a beautiful fairy fly out of a palace. The moment she appeared, the other beautiful fairies immediately paled in comparison. It was as though the halos on their bodies had vanished, turning them from fairies to mortal beauties. Only the fairy that had just appeared could match the word fairy. With just a glance, Zhou's zero taboo crystal had crisscrossing cracks appear on it. Seeing that it was about to shatter, Zhou hurriedly closed his eyes in fright. Chapter 522. This time, when he closed his eyes, the zero taboo crystal didn't immediately extinguish. It continued emitting light as the cracks on the crystal continued to spread. It looked like it was about to shatter, leaving Zhou alarmed. Thankfully, the crystal didn't shatter, and the light gradually dimmed. Now, the zero taboo crystal was like a glass bead that had been cooled by cold water. It was covered in cracks as though it would shatter at any moment. Impressive. Just a glance at her nearly caused my life soul to explode. If she really exists, I wonder what her status is among the mythical stage? The scene of the fairy flying out surfaced in Zhou's mind. Her figure seemed to contain some sort of great Tao profundity. It was indescribably beautiful and shocking. Zhou closed his eyes and sat on the moon rabbit stone. He carefully recalled the details of the fairy's figure, hoping to figure out the true secret of flying immortal. Zhou could sense that the fairy's figure was of immense value to his transcendent flying immortal, but after thinking about it for a long time, he felt that there was a barrier between the two. It made him feel as though he was looking at a beauty through a layer of frosted glass. He could see it, but he couldn't see it clearly. He couldn't help but feel vexed. He got up and walked down the mountain. He wanted to change his mood before thinking about it. He might be able to gain some insight. No matter what, he didn't dare look at the Immortal Palace's phenomenon again. After returning to the encampment, Zhou took out the jade box and placed it on the table. After studying it for a while, he opened the lid. Inside the jade box were more than 10 crystals the size of a cat's eye. They were of different colors and shapes. I wonder what stats these dimensional crystals have? Zhou took out his mysterious phone and snapped a picture of the dimensional crystals. It turned out that they were all epic dimensional crystals. Most of them were crystals of the 4 basic stat. Only 2 were essence energy skill crystals. This left Zhou somewhat disappointed. He originally imagined that the Dharch would definitely be extraordinary. Although epic crystals weren't bad, they were far inferior to the mythical crystals from before. However, on second thought, it made sense. The Dharch was getting him to exchange for money, so how could she get him to take mythical crystals that weren't easy to sell? Epic crystals were currently the easiest to sell. Moreover, the demand for epic crystals was also relatively high. These dozen or so crystals all had varying attributes and qualities. Some were poor while others were good. The best one was a 38 attribute speed crystal. It should be worth quite a bit of money. Of course, the most valuable thing was the 2 primordial energy skill crystals. One was the Cloud Crane crystal, and the other was the Cloud Deer crystal. Zhou had never seen these two-dimensional creatures before, nor did he know what skills they had. Zhou placed the crystals back into the jade box, and was about to put the jade box into the chaos space, when his heart stirred when he picked it up. The dimensional crystals didn't have any temperature, but the jade box was as cold as ice. It didn't seem ordinary. Is it possible that this jade box itself is something good? Zhou held the jade box and studied it. The jade box was moon-white in color and was translucent. It seemed as though one could see inside, but at the same time, one couldn't. It was as though there were clouds and mist within the jade box. After carefully studying the jade box, Zhou discovered something amiss. There were many cloud patterns engraved on the jade box. The cloud patterns were in different postures. In the eyes of an ordinary person, they were clouds of different shapes and sizes. They didn't find anything special about them. Even though some people felt that the cloud patterns were somewhat special, it was difficult to tell the true meaning behind them. However, after careful observation, Zhou realized that the different shapes of the clouds actually contained the beauty of fairies. Every cloud pattern was a fairy's posture. If he hadn't seen the fairies' flying postures with his own eyes, it would have been difficult to tell the profundity of the cloud patterns. This is really a good thing. Zhou picked up the jade box and continued studying the cloud patterns. As he looked at them, he compared them to the fairy postures he had seen. His insights deepened. While Zhou was studying the cloud patterns, another shocking matter happened. The black cubes lit up again before another companion beast appeared on the rankings. The second companion beast on the rankings was actually the publicly recognized number 1 companion beast, Demonic Holy Angel. The Demonic Holy Angel's ranking was ranked by a public organization in the Federation. It was known as the number 1 pet at the epic stage. Now that the Demonic Holy Angel had appeared on the cube's rankings, it failed to surpass the 6-winged guardian dragon and was only ranked 2nd. People couldn't help but guess how strong the 6-winged guardian dragon was to be able to suppress the Demonic Holy Angel. It was truly shocking. For the past few days there had been no commotion. Only 6-winged had been ranked on the rankings. With the Demonic Holy Angel on the rankings, many companion beasts sprung up like bamboo shoots after the rain. One after another, they appeared on the rankings. On the 3-dimensional screen, various pet creatures were constantly displayed. Apart from angels and dragons, there were also sprites, magical beasts, and other companion beasts. The 6-winged guardian dragon, which was originally in 1st place, dropped to 3rd place in a day. There were 8 more companion beasts behind it. There were a total of 11 companion beasts on the rankings. The 2 companion beasts ranked in front of the 6-winged guardian dragon were Death of the Underworld and Frost Giant. They were companion beasts that no one had heard of before. As for the famous Demonic Holy Angel, he was ranked last among all the companion beasts on the rankings. All the companion beasts on the rankings were stronger than him. This caused a huge wave of discussion in the entire Federation. Only then did many ordinary people realize that the so-called strongest Demonic Holy Angel was only at the bottom of the list in the world of truly powerful pets. The powerful companion beasts were exhilarating to watch. However, at the same time, people were also guessing who those extremely powerful companion beasts belonged to. Including Zhou Wen's six-winged guardian dragon, a total of 3 dragons had entered the rankings. It could be said that among all the mythical creatures, it had the most races. However, there was one thing that was very surprising. All the companion beasts that entered the rankings, angels, dragons, elemental sprites, and death, seemed to be from the West and North districts. They didn't see any special companion beasts from the East and South districts on the rankings. In fact, the families that took action this time were indeed from the West and North district. Among them, the Cape family from the West district worked the hardest, occupying 4 spots on the rankings. The Xia and Zhang families of the East district and the Dugu family of the South district didn't have any companion beasts on the rankings. The 4 districts seemed to have completely different attitudes towards the rankings. Zhouwen was still unaware of the changes in the rankings. Lao He was on the way back to school. Although Zhouwen repeatedly said that there was no need to send him back, Lao He insisted on sending him back. Chapter 523. After returning to school, Zhouwen heard the students discussing the companion beasts on the rankings. Ordinary students suspected that they were mythical companion beasts, but no one had seen a real companion beast. Zhouwen also went online to take a look. Many media outlets and individuals had taken pictures of the companion beasts displayed on the cube. The death god of the underworld looked very strange. He was wearing a gray cloak with a dark blue light inside. He didn't have a physical body. He looked a bit like the legendary death god, but he didn't have a sickle in his hand. The frost giant was a giant with a dark blue body. Wherever he walked, ice would form on the ground. The other companion beasts also had their own characteristic. The angels were holy, the pixies were beautiful, and the dragons looked about the same. However, it was obvious that the companion beasts on the rankings were extraordinary just from their auras. Unfortunately, the display on the cube only had the images of the companion beasts. There was no display of their skills. Zhouwen didn't know what the ranking was for, so he quickly lost interest. He picked up his phone and continued grinding Torch Dragon. After this period of battle with Torch Dragon, Zhouwen was gradually able to use his speed and the crystal mirror to block Torch Dragon's bright torch vision world. Unfortunately, Sun Beast companion eggs were too difficult to drop. If he had 2 or more crystal mirrors, the success rate of killing Torch Dragon would be much higher. During this period, Zhouwen had thought of many solutions, such as using a large number of companion beasts to block him. However, it was useless. The blood-colored avatar and the companion beasts in front of him would be reflected in his vision. Apart from the crystal mirror that could reflect, the other companion beasts were useless. Using the crystal mirror to block the Torch Dragon's line of sight required perfect timing and positioning. Otherwise, it would be very difficult to block it. The problem was that Torch Dragon's bright torch vision world wasn't a skill that could only be used once. Therefore, Zhouwen needed to block bright torch vision world multiple times in battle. Otherwise, only death awaited him. Demonic Neonate was on the blood-colored avatar's back, constantly trying to find Torch Dragon's flaws to attack it. There were a few times when she really found an opportunity to stab the ancient sword into Torch Dragon's body, but only half the blade had penetrated. It didn't pose much of a threat to Torch Dragon. As for the blood-colored avatar, it failed to last until Demonic Neonate killed Torch Dragon before being killed by Torch Dragon. According to Zhouwen's calculations, he needed to last at least 3 hours in front of Torch Dragon before Demonic Neonate could kill it. This was the best-case scenario. If the situation didn't go as smoothly as Zhouwen had expected, it might take even longer. In the next few hours, how could he completely block the bright torch vision world was the most pressing problem for him to resolve. As long as he made a single mistake, he would die immediately, and all his efforts would be in vain. After a bitter battle for an hour, the blood-colored avatar was once again killed by Torch Dragon's bright torch vision world. This was the longest Zhouwen had lasted. There can't be any mistakes, nor can there be the slightest error. In a high-intensity battle, in front of a powerful creature like the Torch Dragon, I have to ensure that the timing and position of the crystal mirror are accurate every time. I also have to judge the Torch Dragon's behavior. It's indeed a little too difficult. After some thought, Zhou realized that it was difficult for him to increase his success rate based on his judgment. After all, the other party was a mythical creature stronger than him. It wasn't easy to judge its actions. Since it's difficult to improve my judgment, I can only improve my speed and ability to adjust my position. I'll try my best to prevent Torch Dragon from seeing me. Therefore, in the following battles, Zhou consciously fused the Dragon Gate Flying Immortal skill and Transcendent Flying Immortal with the fairy stance he had comprehended, hoping to raise his movement technique to another level. This wasn't an easy task. Zhou felt that there was a barrier between the fairy's stance and his movement technique. It was difficult to achieve perfection, and there would be problems when fusing them. Zhou wasn't a person who would give up because of difficulties. He continued researching and improving, especially the beautiful fairy's stance. Zhou spent a lot of time studying it. At the Bureau's headquarters, there was a lot of information placed in front of Shin Yuqi. It was basically related to the Black Cube and the companion beasts on the ranking. Director General, apart from the six-winged guardian dragon, the origins of the other companion beasts can be confirmed, Qiao Siyuan said. Shin Yuqi nodded slightly. Why did the families in the West and North districts let their mythical pets enter the rankings? Have you investigated? In fact, there was no need to investigate. Shin Yuqi knew which families the companion beasts came from. The key was why these families wanted their mythical companion beasts to appear in front of others. One had to know that before this, every family hid their mythical companion beasts, afraid that others would know how many mythical companion beasts they had. However, this time, they had taken the initiative to expose a portion of them. Although outsiders were already familiar with this portion, it still left them puzzled. According to our investigations, those families seem to have figured out some of the secrets of the Black Cube. They know that there are benefits to being on the rankings, so they did such a thing. However, this news hasn't been confirmed, so we don't know if it's true or not, Qiao Siyuan answered very conservatively. What kind of benefits? Shin Yuqi understood what Qiao Siyuan meant. This news should have come from those families, but he couldn't guarantee that it wasn't a smokescreen they had deliberately released. From what they said, the companion beasts on the rankings might be fancied by terrifying existences in dimensional zones. There might be benefits, but they aren't sure if the news is true or not. They don't know what benefits there will be. Qiao Siyuan recounted the information he had obtained in detail. After Shin Yuqi heard that, he remained silent. Director General, should we do anything? Qiao Siyuan asked. The Zhang, Xia, and Dugu families haven't taken action. The West and North districts are only tentatively pushing some companion beasts up. Now isn't the time for us to make a move. Let's wait and see for now. After a pause, Shin Yuqi asked, how's the progress with Wang Mingyuan's students? It's not going well. Zhou and Hui Haifeng are protected by their families. It's very difficult to bring them back. Jiang Yan and Zhong Zia's whereabouts are erratic. We haven't been able to catch them after tracking them for so long. None of Wang Mingyuan's 4 students are simple characters. I think Wang Mingyuan might have taken in the 4 of them as students because he has an ulterior motive. It's not purely a coincidence. Qiao Siyuan paused for a moment before saying, furthermore, the 6 families don't seem to be paying much attention to this matter recently. For some reason, even the Cape family, who wanted to capture Zhou the most, seems to have forgotten about this matter. They are all focused on the rankings. That's a little strange. Shin Yuqi pondered over the karma. Chapter 524. In a mysterious land in the West District, in front of an ancient and glorious cathedral, John walked forward step by step. Every step he took seemed to go against the current, exhausting all his strength. Inside the cathedral, a holy light shone out, making people involuntarily lower their heads, not daring to look at the light. When John walked to the cathedral's door and pushed it open with all his strength, the holy light immediately illuminated the entire world. John saw a huge angel mural in the cathedral. The angel's portrait was of a holy six-winged angel. Strangely, there was a drop of blood at the corner of the six-winged angel's eye. Its eyes seemed to be filled with endless sorrow. John's gaze was only slightly shocked by the six-winged angel's portrait before he was attracted by something in the six-winged angel's portrait. In between the six-winged angel's hands was a strange, white cocoon. It was clearly just a portrait, but the white cocoon in the painting seemed real. The Dharch didn't lie to me. There really is such a thing. There really is. John's expression was excited as he stared at the white cocoon in the painting. His gaze gradually turned odd. Gritting his teeth, John walked in front of the six-winged angel portrait and cut his palm with a knife, letting his blood drip onto the white cocoon. It was clearly just a mural, but when John's blood dripped onto the white cocoon, it strangely slid to the side. Not a single drop of blood could touch the white cocoon. Do I really have to do that to make it hatch? John's eyes gradually turned crazy as he watched his blood dripping on the ground. No matter what price I have to pay. I have to defeat that person. I have to. When the madness in John's eyes reached its peak, he suddenly held his knife and slashed at his lower body. Blood splattered as something fell to the ground. As for the blood that flowed from John's palm, it originally couldn't touch the white cocoon at all. It was as though a force was repelling the blood outside the white cocoon. But now, the white cocoon no longer rejected John's blood. Drops of blood landed on the white cocoon and seeped in. Soon, it dyed the white cocoon blood-red. As the white cocoon absorbed the blood, it emitted a holy glow. John's body bathed in the holy glow as his wounds rapidly healed. At the same time, his damaged essence energy sea was repaired. Furthermore, his entire body underwent a strange change. Hardadef felt a pure and holy power flowing through his body. It was stronger and purer than before he was injured. With the help of that power, the divine emperor body also underwent an unpredictable change. Hardadef felt pain and itchiness all over his body, as if he was redeveloping. Feeling the power in his body continuously increasing, Hardadef almost couldn't feel the pain, only incomparable excitement. Ah! The power within Hardadef's body burst out uncontrollably. His limbs spread out as he floated in the air. His skin was like jade, exuding a holy radiance. Behind him, a pair of snow-white angel wings appeared. However, this pair of angel wings was only an illusion and not a real existence. Hardadef was born handsome, and now he was even more handsome. He was like an angel from heaven, as if he was above the mortal world. However, compared to the previous Hardadef, the current Hardadef's handsomeness was a little less masculine and more feminine. This wasn't surprising because angels didn't have gender distinctions. Crack, crack. When Hardadef's body completed the transformation from a human to an angel, the white cocoon also shattered piece by piece, gradually revealing a figure in the cocoon. It was an angel even more handsome than Hardadef. He had 6 angel wings on his back, and his golden hair emitted a sun-like glow. His entire body seemed to be enveloped in holy light. When he walked out of the white cocoon, the entire world seemed to be subdued by his brilliance, turning dim. Hardadef looked at the 6-winged seraphim in front of him with a fervent gaze. He felt the power in his body grow stronger as though he was influenced by him. The 6-winged seraphim looked down at Hardadef like a god. He extended a hand and pressed it on Hardadef's head. He said indifferently, "In the name of an angel, I bestow upon you the right to be protected." With the holy voice, terrifying holy light erupted from the 6-winged seraphim's palm, enveloping Hardadef's body completely. Finally, even the 6-winged seraphim's body was devoured by the holy light. After the holy light dissipated, Hardedef was the only one left in front of the portrait in the cathedral. However, he had an additional snow-white angel armor on his body and 6 snow-white angel wings on his back. His entire body emitted a terrifying holy glow. Did he succeed? Interesting, I wonder if this is the first guardian to be born. Far away in the cave of Chess Mountain, a seductive woman who was chained suddenly had a strange look flash in her eyes as though she had sensed something. However, the strange look quickly vanished. She looked at the phone floating in front of her. There were some photos on the phone's interface. The content was actually a scene of Wang Mingyuan breaking through the realm and charging into the dimension. I never expected that there would be such a powerful fellow among humans today. He actually devoured a dragon guardian? From the looks of it, the human world isn't as boring as I thought. The seductive woman's gaze converged as she suddenly revealed a strange smile. She opened the chat app and clicked on a friend's profile picture to send a message. The seductive woman's friend list was only divided into 2 groups. One group had more friends, while the other group only had 1 person. Now, she was sending the message to the friend in the lone group. Zhouwen was studying the flying immortal stance when he suddenly heard his phone ring. He knew that it was a message from the Dharch. When he opened it, he couldn't help but frown. "You're in big trouble." There were only 6 simple words on the message. "The Dharch, I don't think I've offended you recently, right?" Zhouwen replied. "When did I say that you offended me?" The Dharch replied. "Then why are you looking for trouble with me? Can't anyone else look for trouble with you other than me? Apart from you, there shouldn't be anyone else who can look for trouble with me, right?" Zhouwen said. "That might not be the case." The Dharch immediately sent another message. "I'll give you a chance. Come to Chess Mountain obediently and swear your loyalty to me. I can help you survive this calamity." "Thank you for your kind intentions," Zhouwen said. "All right, I'll wait for you to come to Chess Mountain to beg me." The Dharch seemed very confident. Chapter 525. Zhouwen knew that there was a high chance that there was trouble when the Dharch said that there was trouble. However, if he kept complying with the Dharch, he wouldn't even have any room to bargain with her in the future. Zhouwen didn't want to be a puppet that was at the mercy of others. Furthermore, he also wanted to know if his zero taboo could withstand the Thearka's wish power. As Zhouwen was extra careful, he constantly studied the flying immortal stance. He had made some improvements in the rank 10 Dragon Gate flying immortal skill and transcendent flying immortal, but he hadn't broken through the final step. Zhouwen didn't know what a rank 10 epic primordial energy skill would be like if he broke through. It would be best if he could break through to the mythical stage, but it clearly wasn't that easy. Through the battle with Torch Dragon, Zhouwen constantly honed himself. It could be said that his posture was already very similar to the flying immortal stance, but he was still lacking something. He still hadn't reached that realm. Sometimes, inventions that shocked the world needed a flash of inspiration in addition to constant experimentation. What Zhouwen lacked now was that spark of inspiration in the darkness. Zhouwen could already last more than 2 hours in his battle with Torch Dragon, but it was useless. Even if he lasted 99% of his efforts, everything was useless as long as he didn't kill Torch Dragon. Zhouwen was gaming when he suddenly received an Enshing's call. "Young Master One, there's something I have to tell you. This matter can only be decided by you." Enshing's voice was a little serious. This was a little different from the usual Enshing. "What is it?" Zhouwen knew that it was definitely not simple for Enshing to be so serious. He recalled the trouble the Dharch had mentioned. "John from the Cape family. Do you still remember this person?" Enshing asked after some thought. "I remember. He once came to our college," Zhouwen answered. "Yes, it's because he lost to you and had his primordial energy crippled. Therefore, he made a request to our family to have a fair battle with you. Furthermore, he took the initiative to propose that the duel be held in Luoyang," Enshing said. Zhouwen's heart skipped a beat. He knew that the trouble the Tharch was talking about was most likely John. He remembered that the Tharch had chatted with John online. As the other party has officially proposed a duel and is willing to come to Luoyang alone to challenge you, it's not convenient for us to reject it on your behalf. You have to decide this matter yourself. If young Master Wen isn't willing, you can reject it, and Xing said. John's primordial energy should have been destroyed, right? Did he recover so quickly? Zhou Wen asked. In theory, it's impossible for him to recover so quickly. However, since he dared to come to Luoyang to challenge you, not only has he recovered, but he has also developed further. And Xing paused for a moment before saying, from my personal point of view, I don't think there's a need for you to take the risk to accept the challenge. You think I'll lose? Zhou Wen was somewhat surprised. And Xing should know that he had the six-winged guardian dragon. Under such circumstances, it was clearly unusual for him to persuade him not to accept the challenge. The Cape family also has mythical dimensional creatures. On the cube's ranking, there are 4 mythical pets from the Cape family. I suspect that John brought a mythical companion beast with him this time. And Xing voiced his thoughts. Zhou Wen didn't say a word as Xing continued. Mythical companion beasts have their own characteristics. Before knowing what abilities the other party's mythical companion beast has, it's very dangerous to rashly accept the challenge. I've seen some mythical creatures. The abilities of those mythical creatures are very unreasonable. As long as you are hit, you will definitely die. There's no room for negotiation. It's useless even if you are stronger than them. Just like Love Letter, we studied it for a few years and learned of its various abilities before attacking it. Otherwise, we would definitely suffer heavy losses. I understand what you mean, but I want to accept this challenge, Zhou Wen said after some thought. From Zhou Wen's point of view, this wasn't a battle between him and John, but a secret contest between him and the Tharch. The Tharch seemed to be in the dark. Intentionally or unintentionally, she seemed to want Zhou Wen to rely on her more and more intensely. Just like the previous few times, be it showing off her might or giving him benefits, she was intentionally or unintentionally showing Zhou Wen how powerful and invincible she was. She had inadvertently created a high and mighty image. It was as though as long as Zhou Wen followed her, he would enjoy endless benefits, and if he disobeyed her, he would suffer an irresistible blow. Although the Tharch hadn't really harmed Zhou Wen from beginning to end, Zhou Wen could sense that this wasn't a good thing. In the past, the former principal had once said to Zhou Wen that one should respect everyone, but one definitely couldn't let respect turn into reliance. Otherwise, one would lose the possibility of reaching the peak because the person one relied on was one's endpoint. Therefore, Zhou Wen wanted to accept this challenge, not to defeat John, but to break the net the Tharch had weaved around him and make the Tharch miscalculate once. Alright, since you have already decided, I know what to do. I'll help you choose the location and time. I won't let you suffer in Luoyang. No one can use their powers outside the arena to affect you, but you have to be careful. Don't underestimate John just because he lost to you, and Xing said seriously. Thank you. Zhou Wen felt a warmth in his heart. And Xing was really concerned about him. It had been a long time since he had been cared for by someone. And Xing hung up the phone and turned to Tianzua, who was sitting behind his desk. Overseer, young Master Wen has decided to accept the challenge. He's indeed too young. For John to dare come to Luoyang alone, he must be fully prepared. This battle is extremely dangerous. There's no need for him to take this risk, and Tianzua said. And Xing smiled and asked, Overseer, if it were you, would you accept or reject it? If I accept it, it's because I have the strength to deal with any situation. Although Tianzua didn't answer directly, anyone could tell that he would accept it if it were him. I believe young Master Wen can handle it as well, and Xing said. I'm just afraid that he will be arrogant after obtaining a mythical companion beast and think that he's invincible. When the time comes, he won't even know how he dies, and Tianzhua said with a snort. And Xing didn't say anything else. And Tianzhua paused for a moment before saying, "Go set up the venue. If the Empress Dowager finds out that he suffered, I'm afraid she'll scold me again." "Yes." And Xing accepted the order and left. Not many people knew that John was going to Luoyang to challenge Zhou, but it spread within the 6 families. The other families found it odd. John had just had his essence energy C crippled, but he had recovered so quickly. He even dared to challenge Zhou in Luoyang. This was clearly unusual. Many families were secretly observing this matter. Chapter 526. Strangely, even the Cape family seemed to have a rather strange reaction to John's challenge to Zhou. After the investigations of the other families, it seemed like even they didn't know why John had challenged Zhou. This matter is indeed a little odd. "Xianyue, go watch the battle," Xia Dongyue said to Xia Xianyue. "Is there a need?" Xia Xianyue asked in puzzlement. "Just think of it as a way to relax." Xia Dongyue smiled. The few families had different reactions to this matter. This was because after an investigation, they discovered that John's challenge to Zhou wasn't a premeditated action by the Cape family. It was just John's personal actions. Thus, the number of people paying attention to this matter decreased significantly. Xia Xianyue packed her things and headed for Luoyang. Ever since she lost her mythical companion beast, things hadn't been going well for Xia Xianyue. Although the Xia family had a mythical companion beast, the chances of obtaining another mythical companion beast were much higher than the average person. However, it wasn't easy to obtain a new mythical companion beast. Even the Xia family needed a lot of time to investigate and study before killing a mythical creature. They had to be fully prepared before sending their experts with mythical pet. This typically took a few months. When the time came, it was uncertain if a mythical companion egg would drop. Even if he obtained a mythical companion egg, with so many people in the Xia family waiting in line, it was hard to say when it would be Xia Xuanyue's turn again. Incubating mythical companion beasts was also a huge problem. Wild mythical companion eggs required too much essence energy to incubate. Typical epic humans couldn't withstand it, so they needed to use special methods. The cost was equally huge. After arriving in Luoyang, Xia Xianyue went to a few famous dimensional zones in Luoyang before the duel. One of them was the famous Dragon Gate Grotto. Xia Xianyue explored all the caves that she could enter. When she arrived at Lotus Flower Cave, she saw a familiar person fighting the fairies in Lotus Flower Cave. "It's him." Xia Xianyue immediately recognized the person fighting the fairy as Zhou. She had a deep impression of Zhou. After all, it was because she had stopped Zhou from killing the girl that her mythical companion beast had mysteriously disappeared. Furthermore, she had come to Luoyang to watch Zhou and John's duel. Standing by the side and watching for a while, Xia Xianyue realized that instead of calling it a battle, it was more accurate to say that Zhou was mimicking the fairy's actions. It could be seen that Zhou was much stronger than Fei Tian. It wasn't difficult for him to kill her, but he didn't do so. All he did was use the same movement technique as Fei Tian to constantly circle around her. Is he learning fairy's movement technique? The more Xia Xianyue watched from the side, the stranger she found it. When others imitated and learned, they would get better the more they practiced, but Zhou seemed to get worse the more he practiced. His originally elegant movement technique was becoming stiffer from his imitation. Xia Xianyue had seen too many geniuses who improved the more they learned, but this was the first time she had seen someone like Zhou who was getting worse. Zhou's simulation of the flying immortal stance was always lacking. Since he couldn't see the Immortal Palace phenomenon in-game, Zhou decided to come to the Lotus Flower Cave to fight a fairy. He wanted to compare the difference between a fairy and a flying immortal to see if he could figure out why he couldn't replicate it. Through the comparison in actual combat, he was able to see some differences. The fairy's movement technique was the same as the flying immortal Zhou had seen. They were both extremely elegant, as though fairies were dancing in the clouds. Their figures were also very similar. The only difference would be the state of mind. They were both fairies that flew, but fairies originated from Buddhism, while flying immortals came from Taoism. There was a huge difference in their temperaments, and it could even be said that they were completely different. When Zhou understood this point, he immediately felt enlightened. He knew why he felt that something was amiss. It was normal for there to be a gap when learning the Taoist flying immortal stance with Buddhist foundations. In the battle with the fairy, Zhou constantly considered how he could resolve this problem. The more he practiced, the more he realized that the concepts of fairy and flying immortal were completely different. They were even diametrically opposed. If he wanted to master the flying immortal stance, he had to completely change the concept of his movement technique to truly master the Taoist flying immortal stance. Therefore, while Zhou fought the fairy, he constantly weakened the similarity between his movement technique and the fairies, slowly wiping away the concept of the fairy. He planned on first mastering the flying immortal stance before trying to fuse the two. This resulted in the situation Xia Xianyue saw. Zhou's movement technique seemed to worsen as he practiced, leaving Xia Xianyue puzzled. She didn't know what Zhou was doing. After watching for a while, Zhou's movement technique had already become terrible. From Xia Xianyue's point of view, the movement technique had a stance, but it lacked charm. But soon, Xia Xianyue realized that Zhou's movement technique had changed again. The originally stiff movement technique seemed to become elegant again. However, this elegance was somewhat different from the fairy. Strange? It looks like a fairy's movement technique, but why does it feel like the two movement techniques are completely different? Xia Xianyue saw the problem. They were both extremely elegant movement technique. The fairy's movement technique had a sense of dance and music, while Zhou's movement technique looked even more extraordinary. It didn't have that decadent feeling. Zhou was also pleasantly surprised. After completely wiping away the concept of the fairy's movement technique, Zhou realized that the barrier he had previously felt seemed to vanish. His movement technique became more and more smooth. Xia Xianyue couldn't help but be surprised. He was clearly imitating the fairy's movement technique, but he was able to master a completely different concept. This was the first time she had seen such a person. This Zhou is indeed different. It's no wonder even a peer like Lance was defeated by him. Xia Xianyue nodded inwardly. Crack. Zhou didn't plan on killing the fairy, but he just passed by it. The force from the corner of his clothes sliced open the fairy's body, causing it to die. Having lost his opponent, Zhou felt somewhat at a loss. At that moment, inspiration surged in his mind. Just as he was about to take another step forward, he suddenly felt a stifling feeling of having nowhere to vent his strength after suddenly losing his opponent. Just as he was about to head deep into the cave to find another fairy, even if it was just a few fairy beasts, he suddenly felt a sharp sword intent tear through the air. Zhou was alarmed. He had been turning on the truth listener earring the entire time, but he hadn't noticed when the person had arrived. Although this had something to do with his focus on practicing the flying immortal stance, it also meant that the person was no trifling matter. The sword intent was like a tidal wave. A black-robed woman used her fingers as a sword as she tore through the air. Her figure was like a rainbow piercing through the sun as a cold wind blew. I just want a game in peace, I just want a game in peace. Chapter 527. Zhou was somewhat surprised when he saw that the person was Xia Xianyue. The shocking scene of Xia Xianyue having her ancient sword forcefully snatched away by demonic neonate was still fresh in his mind. Could it be that Xia Xianyue knows that I snatched the ancient sword and is here to settle scores with me? Zhou originally wanted to explain, but Xia Xianyue's sword intent was just too powerful. Her movement technique was just too fast, giving him no chance to explain. There's nothing wrong with that. Let's win first. Those with bigger fists are in the right. Zhouwen understood this well and didn't wish to explain. He used his newly comprehended flying immortal stance to fight Xia Xianyue. Xia Xianyue was many times stronger than a fairy. She immediately put immense pressure on Zhouwen. Zhouwen wasn't satisfied to begin with, but under this pressure, he felt an indescribable sense of joy. He displayed the flying immortal stance he had comprehended. Xia Xuanyue's movement technique was a secret technique of the Xia family. It was called Path to Snatching Heaven. There was no path in the world, and if the living beings in the world wanted to survive, they had to snatch a path from the heavens themselves. That was why the strange name of Path to Snatching Heaven came about. Fight for living space with all living things. Either you die or I perish. This was the first sentence of the Path to Snatching Heaven's opening chapter. Therefore, the Xia family's path to snatching heaven could be said to be a fight for every inch of land. I walk your path, leaving you with no path to take. The path to snatching heaven vividly displayed the word snatch. Zhouwen felt happy in the beginning, but it didn't take long for the carefree feeling to vanish without a trace. He felt even more stifled than before. Xia Xuanyue's movement technique was just too domineering. Zhouwen often only used half of his movement technique before Xia Xianyue sealed off the subsequent changes, leaving him no choice but to switch to another stance. And this was only the beginning. Xia Xuanyue's movement technique was like an unbridled bandit, constantly suppressing Zhouwen, preventing him from using a complete move. Often, he would only be able to use his movement technique halfway before he had no choice but to stop and change his stance. The flying immortal stance didn't have any immortal aura. Even the ethereal feeling vanished. The stumbling made one feel extremely uncomfortable. Even bystanders felt aggrieved, much less Zhouwen himself. However, Zhouwen was the kind of person who knew when to advance. The more pressure Xia Xianyue gave him, the higher his fighting spirit became. He had to resolve the problem. The two of them fought silently in the cave. The space Zhouwen could move in was constantly squeezed. This was the first time Zhouwen had encountered such a domineering movement technique. He even felt like he had nowhere to go. If it were someone with a weak will, they would probably give up on such a battle and use brute force to fight Xia Xianyue to the death. However, Zhouwen didn't do that. He continued searching for a way to break through Xia Xuanyue's suppression. Xia Xianyue became more and more astonished. Zhouwen was much younger than her, about 10 years old. He was about the same age as Xia Bing and company. However, Zhouwen's determination was far greater than what Xia Bing and company could compare with. Under her movement technique, even Xia Bing, who was familiar with the path to snatching heaven, could only last for a few minutes at most before her mental state fluctuated. However, after fighting her for so long, Zhouwen remained highly focused. He constantly tried all sorts of methods to compete with her. He didn't retreat or risk his life irresponsibly. Under the constant suppression, he was able to maintain such a firm mentality. It truly surprised Xia Xianyue. It's no wonder the family places so much importance on him. Just this firm willpower is incomparable to the average person. Resources can be obtained through means. Primordial energy arts, companion beasts, and the like can be slowly obtained, but if a person's willpower isn't firm, it will be difficult for them to achieve great things no matter how many resources they have. If this Zhouwen doesn't perish, he will definitely be a candidate to reach the mythical stage in the future, Xia Xianyue marveled inwardly. Under Xia Xuanyue's suppression, Zhouwen's flying immortal stance constantly improved, becoming more and more transcendent. Zhouwen's heart became calmer and calmer, and the pressure Xia Xianyue could give him decreased. When Xia Xianyue saw that her path to snatching heaven movement technique could reduce the pressure on Zhouwen, she increased the strength of her sword technique, immediately increasing the pressure on Zhouwen. However, this pressure didn't last long. Zhouwen gradually stabilized the situation. His movement technique became more and more extraordinary, as though he was soaring into the sky. It was completely different from his previous flying movement technique. Xia Xuanyue's eyes turned serious. Xia Xianyue, who hadn't used her life soul all this while, used it as well. A vertical eye appeared at Xia Xuanyue's glabella. The eye didn't have a pupil, and its interior was as smooth as a mirror. The moment Xia Xuanyue's life soul appeared, Zhou Wen, who had already stabilized the situation, immediately fell into a disadvantage. This time, Zhou Wen felt like he was lacking in strength. No matter how he changed his movement technique, no matter how perfectly he used the flying immortal stance, he was constantly suppressed by Xia Xianyue. One sword and one person, forcing Zhou Wen to retreat repeatedly. Even his retreat path had been sealed, making him feel like a trapped beast. No. It still doesn't work. Zhou Wen realized that no matter how he changed his movement technique, Xia Xianyue seemed to be able to predict his movement. She sealed off all his possibilities, making him feel like a bird in a cage or a monkey in Buddha's palm. He couldn't escape no matter what. This pressure was different from fighting a powerful mythical creature. When fighting a mythical creature, one could only do their best despite knowing that they were no match for it. However, when fighting Xia Xianyue, even though he felt that his strength wasn't inferior to hers, he felt restrained. It was as though he was bound by countless invisible threads, preventing him from unleashing his strength. This feeling of being aggrieved was even more uncomfortable than not having the ability to fight. The Slaughterer life soul augmented Zhou Wen's strength and speed, but it was unable to allow him to break through Xia Xuanyue's attack. As he retreated again and again, Zhou Wen was forced deep into the cave. Behind him was the stone wall, and there was no way out. Xia Xuanyue's oppression continued. Even Xia Xianyue had to admit that even among her peers, there weren't many who could last so long under her sword. This wasn't a matter of strength, but the sense of oppression. It was easy for people to give up on themselves and have thoughts of risking their lives. And in a battle between true experts, every single detail would be calculated. The so-called eruption and risking one's life didn't actually exist. The more rash one was, the more flaws one would reveal, and the easier it was to die. In an extreme disadvantage, the best solution wasn't to risk one's life, but to calm oneself down. Even when one was bleeding and injured, one had to maintain a calm mind and think of a way to resolve the problem. That was the only way out. Under such pressure, Zhou Wen had already pushed the flying immortal stance to its limits, but he was still unable to resist Xia Xianyue. This made him involuntarily think of the fairy who had broken out of the door. Perhaps only such a movement technique can break through the other party's suppression. Zhou Wen's eyes burned as countless thoughts flashed through his mind. Chapter 528. The image of the fairy breaking out of the door had been replayed in Zhou Wen's mind countless times. It wasn't difficult to imitate the fairy's posture, but it was difficult to understand the realm and profundity behind it. Through his understanding of the flying immortal stance, Zhou Wen had gained some understanding of the fairy's posture of breaking out of the door. However, he didn't know what effect these insights would have. However, now that he was forced into a corner, Zhou Wen couldn't care less. At the instant Xia Xuanyue's sword technique sealed off all his paths of retreat, he used Transcendent Flying Immortal. This Transcendent Flying Immortal was completely different from the previous Transcendent Flying Immortal. Although the move was the same, the concept was worlds apart. Previously, Transcendent Flying Immortal was extremely domineering, but now, it had a carefreeness that transcended the mortal world. If he had to use a word to describe it, Zhou Wen felt that this was the true immortal. The traditional concept of immortals in the East District was definitely not the peerlessly domineering kind. Immortals and gods were actually two completely different concepts. Gods represented power. They were worshipped because they dominated a certain power, so gods were rulers. As for the word immortal, it was the word human plus the word mountain. The original meaning was a person who sought transcendence in the mountains. Immortality was a pure pursuit, a form of growth. From a certain perspective, it could even be said to be the complete opposite of gods who represented power. Previously, transcendent flying immortal was too domineering and was closer to the side of gods. Now, Zhou Wen's transcendent flying immortal had more of an immortal intent. Xia Xuanyue's life soul was named Catoptric Eyes. It could allow her to enter an extraordinary ethereal realm. Under that ethereal realm, not only could it strengthen her physique, but it could also give her the power of clairvoyance. Although she couldn't really see through the future, she could predict her opponent's actions. However, it wasn't 100% accurate. Relying on the Catoptric Eyes and the path to snatching heaven, as well as her outstanding sword techniques, Xia Xianyue was a rather terrifying person of her generation. Some people even believed that she could compare to an Tianzhua, who was about the same age. In fact, in terms of combat skills, there weren't many people in the older generation who could match Xia Xianyue, much less her peers. Xia Xianyue had already forced Zhou Wen into a corner and was about to stop. She didn't really want to fight to the death with Zhou Wen to begin with. She just felt that Zhou Wen's movement technique wasn't enough. She also wanted to see how far it could reach, so she took the initiative to be Zhou Wen's sparring partner and force him to showcase his movement technique. Zhou Wen's performance had already surprised Xia Xianyue. His movement technique was already comparable to the top movement techniques of the 6 families, but that was all. Being able to match a top movement technique didn't mean that he could match a top person. In fact, Zhou Wen's movement technique couldn't withstand her. Just as she was about to stop, Xia Xuanyue's pupils suddenly constricted. This was because her Catoptric Eyes suddenly seemed to lose their effect. She was unable to deduce Zhou Wen's movement trajectory. The Catoptric Eyes didn't predict things out of thin air. Instead, it formed an illusion in her eyes that constantly deduced the various reactions that the opponent might make next. This allowed Xia Xianyue to know what the opponent might do next, so that she could prepare in advance or target them in advance. This deduction was extremely fast, just like a computer's calculations. In an instant, it was fed back into Xia Xuanyue's brain. There wasn't a need for complicated thinking, as it could be synchronized with the battle. However, the situation now was different. The Catoptric Eyes couldn't deduce Zhou Wen's subsequent reactions. Or rather, there were too many subsequent reactions, so it was no longer of any reference value. It was like a person walking at a fork in the road. Xia Xianyue could easily determine that the person would choose one of the two paths. The chances of making a correct judgment were very high, and the preparation work was also very easy. At most, she could make preparations for both paths. But now, Zhou Wen seemed to be standing on an overpass that extended in all directions with more than 100 forks. Even if the Catoptric Eyes could deduce all the possibilities, it was meaningless. It was impossible for Xia Xianyue to seal off so many subsequent changes. The present Zhou Wen gave Xia Xianyue such a feeling. His movement technique looked erratic and unpredictable. Even Xia Xianyue couldn't predict his trajectory. At that moment, the boundary between the Dragon Gate flying immortal skill and transcendent flying immortal began to blur. There was no longer any difference between movement techniques and move. He moved freely, but it had an unfathomable profundity. Elegant. Xia Xianyue could only use this word to describe Zhou Wen's movement technique. No matter how domineering her sword techniques and path to snatching heaven were, they didn't seem to pose a threat to him. As for Zhou Wen's casual actions, they made Xia Xianyue feel immense pressure. Wherever his clothes passed, cracks would appear in the void. Xia Xianyue realized that she couldn't keep up with Zhou Wen's speed. Xia Xianyue couldn't help but turn serious. She treated Zhou Wen as an equal opponent, unlike before when she only wanted to see how strong he was. Xia Xuanyue's movement technique was domineering, while Zhou Wen's movement technique was elegant. The two completely different movement techniques constantly clashed, benefiting both Zhou Wen and Xia Xianyue greatly. In terms of talent, Xia Xianyue wasn't inferior to anyone. Few people in the Xia family could master the path to snatching heaven, and Xia Xianyue had already gained a basic mastery of it when she was 11 or 12. However, at her current realm, be it the path to snatching heaven's movement technique or her own level and realm, they had reached a bottleneck. Advancing from the epic stage to the mythical stage was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Nurturing a mythical pet was already difficult enough. It required a large amount of resources, but advancing to the mythical stage by humans was hundreds or thousands of times harder than nurturing a mythical pet. There were many members of the 6 families with resources and talent, but over the years, how many had truly advanced to the mythical stage? With a perfect life soul, unparalleled movement techniques and sword techniques, and a mythical pet, Xia Xianyue, who wasn't even 30 years old, was almost at the pinnacle of humanity. It was lonely at the top. From Xia Xianyue's point of view, that wasn't a compliment, but a form of sorrow. This was because she had nowhere else to go. Therefore, even if she lost her mythical companion beast, Xia Xianyue didn't mind. This was because she had always been in the same spot. Even if she waited a few more years for a mythical companion beast, she would still be in the same spot. It didn't make much of a difference to her. However, today's battle with Zhou Wen had stirred up her yearning for victory and a breakthrough that she hadn't felt in a long time. Even her thoughts that had been stagnant for a long time seemed to become active. Winning had become a matter of course in the past few years, not a pursuit. But now, Xia Xianyue wanted to win. Chapter 529. As the sword fused with her body, Xia Xianyue fused her sword technique and movement technique into one. There was no distinction between them. Her body was her sword, and her sword was her body. Only by doing so could she resist Zhou Wen's transcendent flying immortal. The two of them gradually realized that although their movement techniques looked completely different, or even completely opposite, they complemented each other. The path to snatching heaven was created with the concept of humans constantly striving to improve themselves and snatch fate from the heavens. As for Zhou Wen's immortal intent, it was also a product of humans' pursuit of transcendence. However, one was to conquer nature, while the other was to return to nature. It could be said that they had taken two completely different paths in the same pursuit. In the battle between the two techniques, it was difficult to determine who was superior. No one could gain the upper hand. Both of them were pursuing breakthroughs, hoping to overwhelm the other party. However, with every bit of insight they gained, they felt that their opponent was stronger. They couldn't suppress the other party no matter what. This was the first time they had encountered such a tenacious opponent. They racked their brains and used all their talent to constantly gain self-enlightenment and counterattack. Inside the lotus flower cave, two silhouettes constantly crossed each other, like two streams of light flashing. Wherever the streams of light passed, the energy was like the glow of a sword. Just the energy brought by the fluttering of their clothes could easily cut through the rocks, leaving behind cracks that looked like sword scars on the surface. Wherever the two of them went, the flying beasts and fairies were torn apart by the sword-like forces. The surrounding rocks shattered as a result, and the lotus flower cave was filled with traces of battle. Zhou Wen had already comprehended the concept of a fairy's door breaker. He could perfectly fuse it with transcendent flying immortal, but he was ultimately unable to defeat Xia Xianyue. He couldn't help but have another thought. If I fuse the two different concepts of fairy and flying immortal into transcendent flying immortal, I wonder if it will work. Zhou Wen thought to himself. This was definitely a crazy and bold idea, but the moves were the same. It was just that the concept was different, so it might not be impossible. Zhou Wen's mind was constantly brewing as he waited for that opportunity. Xia Xianyue was also pondering. The Xia family was originally an ancient family in the East District. Before the dimensional storms, they had a deep cultural heritage. Therefore, after the dimensional storms, the Xia family was one of the earliest families to obtain primordial energy art. There were even many primordial energy arts and techniques that the Xia family had comprehended from ancient culture. The path to snatching heaven was like that, and so were many of the Xia family's primordial energy arts. Outsiders only believed that the Xia family was so powerful because they produced one of the Federation's 6 heroes. However, they didn't know that even without one of the Federation's 6 heroes, the Xia family wouldn't be weak. Therefore, the Xia family had the confidence to abandon the famous invincible connate divine art. Even without the invincible connate divine art, the Xia family's primordial energy art was enough to allow them to stand tall among the experts. The primordial energy art that Xia Xianwei cultivated was one of the primordial energy arts that the Xia family had comprehended from ancient culture. It was called the Great Emperor Sutra. However, as it was comprehended from ancient culture, it wasn't as complete as a ready-made primordial energy art. After several generations of research and improvement by the Xia family, by Xia Xuanyue's generation, the Great Emperor Sutra already had 3 complete parts: mortal, legendary, and epic. However, after reaching the epic tier, no one knew where to go. The Great Emperor's scripture didn't have the latter half, so they could only rely on themselves to explore. Xia Xianyue had been studying the Great Emperor Sutra, but her improvement was very limited. In the past year or two, she had completely stagnated. Even though she had read many ancient books, trying to find a direction to break through from her thoughts, the effects were minimal. However, the battle with Zhou Wen gave Xia Xianyue new ideas. It's extremely difficult to snatch a path from the heavens. As the leader of humanity, the Emperor is the person who faces the path of the heavens the most. A thought sprouted in Xia Xuanyue's heart. The 2 figures continued to clash and tangle with each other. Suddenly, the 2 of them seemed to have some kind of tacit understanding. They retreated from the battle at the same time and quieted down. They each stood at one end of the cave and stared at their opponent. There seemed to be some kind of strange power brewing in their bodies, as if it was the eve of a storm. The cave they were in happened to be one of the dimensional lotus cave. The ceiling of the cave was engraved with exquisite lotus patterns, and there were even flying apsaras circling it. As the 2 of them faced each other in silence, a distorted space suddenly appeared in the middle of the lotus flower pattern. A creature crawled out of the lotus flower and happened to be in the middle of the 2 of them. It was a fairy. When the fairy appeared in the cave, the originally calm cave suddenly erupted with terrifying power. In an instant, the fairy seemed to be sliced apart by countless sword beams, turning into fragments. Zhou Wen and Xia Xuanyue's auras were stirred at the same time as they involuntarily moved. Zhou Wen's body went from extreme stillness to extreme movement. In an instant, he streaked across the void. He looked elegant, but no one had any time to react. Despite seeing it with their eyes, their brains didn't have the time to give the command to react. They could only watch helplessly as the figure floated past them. The despair was enough to destroy a person's soul. However, not only did Xia Xianyue react, but she also took a step forward. The sword intent on her body seemed to be earth-shattering. With unparalleled faith, she faced Zhou Wen's terrifying strike. Blood bloomed like a flower. Xia Xuanyue's finger stopped at Zhou Wen's glabella, and Zhou Wen's finger was pressed against Xia Xuanyue's swan-like neck. Drops of blood slid down their fingers. Hardadef came to Luoyang again. This wasn't his first time here, but his mood was completely different from the last time he came. Zhou Wen, it's time to pay the price for what you've done. Hardadef walked on the streets of Luoyang. His angel-like handsome face attracted the attention of passers-by. There were many handsome men, but they had never seen one as handsome as Hardadef. However, the present Hardadef was completely different from the princely gentleman from before. There was no expression on his face, and his entire being was as perfect as a sculpture. His every move had an elegance that made others feel ashamed of their inferiority. "Mr. Hardedef, welcome to Luoyang." And Xing stood in front of the car and greeted Hardedef with a smile. Although he wasn't as handsome as Hardedef, for some reason, he didn't feel inferior even when standing in front of Hardedef. The two girls stood across the street and looked at Hardedef before looking at Xing. For a moment, they didn't know who was more charming. "Where's Zhouwen?" Hardedef looked at Xing and asked coldly, as though there was nothing else worthy of his concern other than Zhouwen. Chapter 530. Zhouwen returned to his dorm and held the mysterious phone to look at the blood-colored avatar's information. He had a smile on his face as though he had won the lottery. Transcendent Flying Immortal. Mythical. It was just 3 simple words, but it made Zhouwen's heart feel as though he had eaten honey. The Dragon Gate Fairy skill and Dragon Gate Flying Immortal skill he had previously learned had vanished, leaving only Transcendent Flying Immortal. Furthermore, this skill didn't have a rank display. What was even stranger was that there was no display of essence energy expenditure. However, Zhouwen quickly understood why Transcendent Flying Immortal didn't have any display of essence energy expenditure. It was because he could already use Transcendent Flying Immortal as he wished. He could freely control how much essence energy he expended, so naturally, there was no limit to his essence energy expenditure. If only advancing to the mythical stage was that simple, Zhouwen thought greedily. Unfortunately, his life soul hadn't advanced to the perfect stage. It was too early to think about the mythical stage. His most important life soul, Slaughterer, was still a primordial body and hadn't advanced. No matter what, having a mythical skill will greatly increase my strength. If I can train all my skills to the mythical stage, I'll be really impressive. Zhouwen tried some of his other skills and realized that it was difficult to even train them to rank 10, much less advance to the mythical stage. In fact, although mythical skills were much easier than advancing to the mythical stage, not just anyone could comprehend a mythical skill at the epic stage. Zhouwen was able to comprehend it because of his talent and because he had sufficient resources. If he didn't have so many skills as a foundation and had seen the phenomenon of the fairy tearing down the door, it would have been impossible for him to advance to the mythical stage. Another important reason was that his opponent was sufficiently powerful. Furthermore, the other party's skill coincidentally countered his Transcendent Flying Immortal, allowing both parties to gain insights that allowed him to advance to the mythical stage by chance. Zhouwen guessed that Xia Xuanyue's move had also advanced to the mythical stage. However, she didn't have the mysterious phone to read the information, so she should have understood it. The heritage of the 6 families is really terrifying. Any random woman has such abilities. Zhouwen increasingly felt that the 6 families had a robust foundation. However, he was wrong. A person like Xia Xianyue was also a top expert among the 6 families. She wasn't as common as Zhouwen imagined. Just as he was admiring his godly skill, his phone suddenly rang. It was Xing. "Young Master Wen, John has already arrived in Luoyang. He came alone. He didn't bring anyone from the Cape family," Xing said. Zhouwen knew that Xing was telling him that since John dared to come to Luoyang alone, he definitely wouldn't be unprepared. He was also warning Zhouwen to be careful. Unbeknownst to Xing, Zhouwen was more careful than he imagined. This was because Zhouwen knew that he wasn't only facing John. There was also the terrifying the Dharch. "Where will the duel take place? How long is it?" Zhouwen asked. "Tomorrow, it'll be in the city's arena. The venue has already been set up. We definitely won't let external forces affect your battle with John. You can rest assured about this. We have also invited the people from the Zhang family and the Xia family to watch the battle. They can also be regarded as witnesses, in case the Cape family causes trouble afterward. The Dugu family has also sent people over, but they haven't arrived yet. I don't know if they will appear tomorrow." And Xing explained the general situation. Ah Xing, you've seen John, right? Do you feel that he's different from before? When Zhou asked this question, he was thinking about the message the Tharch had mistakenly sent him. He's indeed a little different. He looks very confident. Furthermore, his aura is very strong. It's far from what a legendary can compare with. This person is definitely not simple, and Xing said. You didn't notice anything else? Zhou asked. What else? And Xing didn't know what Zhou was referring to. Do you feel that John's appearance, temper, or voice are different from before? Zhou didn't know what to say. His temper should be a little different from before. He looks cold, as though he doesn't care about anything. He's like a high and mighty god. The way he looks at us is like he's looking at ants, and Xing said after some thought. It's not that. Let's put it this way. Don't you think he's a little effeminate? Zhou changed his question. Not really, and Xing said after some thought. Zhou thought to himself, could it be that the Thearcha's message wasn't sent to John? And Xing said that he would pick Zhou up tomorrow and told him to make preparations for the battle. In Luoyang's largest arena, it was mainly used for companion beasts to fight. Most of the battles were performances, but the military had sealed off the arena today. Only a few people who had been invited could enter the arena. Among the people who came was Xia Xianyue. Just as she walked into the arena, she saw a man with a huge sword on his back standing in front of the arena's guardrail. Dugugu? Xia Xianyue couldn't help but be slightly surprised when she saw the man. She never expected him to come to Luoyang. Dugugu was a few years older than Xia Xianyue and Tianzhua. He was in his early 30s, and Xia Xianyue had always heard of his legend. Within the 6 families, Dugugu had a very strange nickname. He was known as the only man in the Dugu family who wasn't afraid. It wasn't that the men of the Dugu family were really cowardly. However, the Dugu family was especially good at movement technique. Therefore, when others fought the Dugu family, they couldn't even touch their bodies. They were very depressed, so they mocked them and said that the Dugu family was too cowardly. In such a family, Dugugu was an anomaly. He would never use his body technique to win when he fought with others. When he went out to travel, he fought with all 6 families, and the 6 families were convinced of his strength. Among those who were about the same age as Dugugu, no one could defeat him. Unfortunately, as Dugugu was a little older than them, he didn't participate in the battle between Tianzhua and the younger generation of the 6 families. The 6 families believed that Dugugu was definitely not weaker than Tianzhua and might even be stronger. Back when Dugugu came to the Xia family to challenge them, Xia Xianyue was only 10 years old. However, she had a deep impression of Dugugu because a cousin she admired when she was young had failed to defeat Dugugu. In recent years, she had rarely heard news of Dugugu. She heard that he was attacking a large dimensional zone in the South District. She never expected to see him here. I remember you. You're lascivious sister, right? Dugugu looked at Xia Xianyue and said as he recalled. My brother's name is Xia Luchuan, Xia Xianyue said gloomily. It's the same. After Dugugu said that, he turned to look at the arena and saw a handsome man who didn't look human standing in the arena. That young man from the Cape family is very terrifying, Dugugu said to Xia Xianyue. Xia Xianyue was slightly surprised. She didn't expect Dugugu to have such a high evaluation of Hardadef. To make Dugugu say the word terrifying, it was truly terrifying. Chapter 531. Xia Xianyue couldn't help but look at Hardadef. Although Hardadef had the title of saint in the past in the 6 families, the title was just a child's joke. Ignoring Xia Xuanyue's generation, even among Hardadef's peers, there were freaks like Lance. There was no way Hardadef would be one. Now, Hardadef was actually praised by Dugugu. This made Xia Xianyue couldn't help but size him up carefully. Hardadef stood in the arena like an ancient Greek statue. Just by standing there, He gave off a holy beauty. His aura was indeed very strong. He was likely at the epic stage, but Xia Xianwei couldn't tell where the terror Dugugu mentioned came from. Why do you say that? Xia Xianwei walked to Duguji's side and asked in puzzlement. He has a special power, Dugugu said to Hardadef. Special? Xia Xianwei didn't understand what Dugugu meant by special. Many essence energy arts, essence energy skills, pets, life providences, and life souls could be considered special powers. This description was too general. Dugugu said, I entered a dimensional zone with Lascivious. In that dimensional zone, we discovered a black cocoon. Did he tell you about this? No, but I've heard of such cocoons. The 6 families have similar record. In certain mysterious dimensional zones, there will be similar cocoons. However, there will be powerful mythical creatures near those cocoons. No one knows what's inside the cocoons. Most people guess that it might be a descendant of a mythical creature, Xia Xianwei said. No, it's definitely not a descendant of an ordinary mythical creature. Back then, Scumbag and I once cracked open a crack in a black cocoon and saw the creature inside. It was completely different from the mythical creature guarding it. It was an even more terrifying existence. As Dugugu spoke, his gaze landed on Hardadef. He said with certainty, There's a similar aura on Hardadef, but it's a little different. What kind of creature is that? Why has my brother never mentioned it? Xia Xianwei asked. I don't know. We originally thought that with our strength and mythical pets, even if we couldn't defeat the mythical creature guarding the black cocoon, it wouldn't be difficult to take it away. In the end, after using all our strength, we only managed to crack open a crack in the black cocoon. We were almost killed by the creature inside. As for the creature inside the black cocoon, it only waved its hand. Dugugu paused and said, Nasty was seriously injured. We could say that we escaped death. He recuperated at my house for nearly half a year before he almost recovered. I remember now. 1 year, my brother went to Southside. He said that he would only be there for a month or 2, but he didn't come back until almost a year later. I think it was that time. Xia Xianwei paused for a moment before saying, Ever since he returned, my brother seems to have changed into a different person. He's researching information every day, as if he's studying something. He's very mysterious. I asked him, but he didn't tell me what he was investigating. It should be that time. Anyone who has seen such a terrifying creature wouldn't be indifferent. However, it was too dangerous. He probably didn't want you to worry and was afraid that you would stop him from going again. That's why he didn't tell you, Dugugu said. You said that John has the aura of that creature? The way Xia Xianwei looked at John turned odd. Yes, but it's a little different. I can't be sure if it's the same aura, Dugugu said. What are you talking about? A voice came from behind. A long-haired man in a robe walked over. The man looked ordinary, but his eyes were abnormally beautiful. His eyes weren't big, nor were they double eyelids, but the lines were especially beautiful. Zhang Chuanqiu, why are you willing to come out? Dugugu looked at the man in surprise. Back then, Dugugu had challenged the young experts of the 6 families and had never lost. However, there were people who could fight him to a draw. Zhang Chuanqiu was one of them. In that era, the geniuses of the 6 families multiplied. They were known as the Golden Generation. Perhaps it was because that generation had used up all the luck of the 6 families. With 4 to 5 years as a gap, there were fewer and fewer people born after that who could stand their own ground. At John's level, only Lance was outstanding. The others were slightly lacking. Instead, many geniuses that stunned the era appeared outside the 6 families. The Yin family asked our Zhang family to be a witness, so I came. Zhang Chuanqiu came to Duguji's side and sat down on the spectator stand. Zhang Xiao didn't come to bear witness for such a trivial matter, but you came? Dugugu naturally didn't believe it. This world hasn't been peaceful recently. The fiend tomb has been stirring, and a black cube has appeared. I have a nagging feeling that something big is about to happen, so I came out to take a look, Zhang Chuanxiu said. Something happened to the fiend tomb? Dugugu and Xia Xianyue were alarmed. They knew very well that the Zhang family had guarded the fiend tomb for so many years. Several generations of people had been buried there, preventing the creatures in the fiend tomb from wreaking havoc in the human world. If something really happened to the fiend tomb, the Zhang family wouldn't be the only one affected. It's temporarily stabilized, so I can come out for a walk. Zhang Chuanxiu's gaze landed on John as his beautiful eyes narrowed slightly. This John has something very interesting on him. You can tell too? Dugugu sat down beside Zhang Chuanxiu. Xia Xianyue also sat down. Compared to Zhang Chuanxiu and Dugu Ji's generation, her talent and strength weren't inferior. However, she was much less experienced. Back then, there were very few mythical companion eggs in the 6 families. It wasn't like now, where they could directly give Xia Xianyue a mythical companion egg. Back then, if they wanted a mythical companion egg, they could only take risks in dimensional zones. This resulted in a gap in experience. However, their generation was also the one with the most tragic death. Very few people could retrieve mythical creatures alive. I just wanted to take a look on the way, but I never expected to see such an interesting thing. However, his opponent is a little weak. I wonder if he can force that thing out, Zhang Chuanxiu said. That might not be the case. Although I don't know how terrifying that thing is, John's opponent is definitely not weak, Xia Xianyue said. Zhang Chuanxiu smiled. Zhouwen should be Wang Mingyuan's student, right? Speaking of which, I really wanted to meet Wang Mingyuan. Unfortunately, I missed the opportunity. Dugugu said, to be able to defeat Lance, he naturally isn't weak. However, he has limited time to grow. I wonder how strong he is now. As the 3 of them spoke, Zhouwen walked from the entrance to the venue. Everyone couldn't help but look over. Chapter 532. TSK. His life providence is indeed extraordinary. It's not easy to see someone like him in our 6 families, Zhang Chuanxiu said with narrowed eyes as he sized up Zhouwen's face. This person's aura is deep and restrained. His eyes are firm. If he doesn't die, he will definitely achieve great things in the future, Dugugu said with a nod. In recent years, outstanding talents have appeared everywhere. On the contrary, although our 6 families have many talented people born, we lack the light from providence and perseverance, Zhang Chuanxiu said with a sigh. Xia Xianyue and Dugugu remained silent. What Zhang Chuanxiu said was also something they were worried about. The 6 families seemed to be getting worse with each generation. There were faint signs of their light from providence weakening. However, the juniors were disappointing. This was a problem that no one could solve. If the son couldn't do it, the father could only worry. Zhouwen, we finally meet again. John was originally standing quietly in the arena with his eyes closed. The moment Zhouwen stepped into the arena, he opened his eyes and stared intently at Zhouwen. I don't really want to see you that much. As Zhouwen spoke, he couldn't help but glance at John's crotch. Unfortunately, he couldn't see anything because he was wearing clothes. Of course, Zhouwen only subconsciously glanced at it. He didn't really want to see anything that stung his eyes, so he didn't use Truth Listener's ability to listen. After today, I'm afraid you won't have a chance to see me. I'll take back the debt you owe me and my sister with interest today. I'll let you have a taste of having your essence energy crippled. That feeling of living a life worse than death, John said with a cold expression. I'm afraid I'll disappoint you, Zhouwen said firmly. It was easy to kill Zhouwen, but it was impossible to cripple his essence energy because he didn't have one. John didn't say a word as he walked towards Zhouwen. And Xing led many soldiers and guarded the stands, watching every move in the arena. In the family's study, Tianzhua was watching the battle through the surveillance footage from his phone. In the cave of Chess Mountain, the Dharch was also looking at her phone. The scene was the same as in Tianzua's phone. You won't be able to escape my grasp. Upon seeing Zhou Wen on the screen, the Thearcha's seductive eyes narrowed slightly. Zhou Wen, accept God's judgment. As Hardadef spoke, he raised his hand high. Holy light spewed out from his hand, transforming into a blade of holy light that reached the sky as it slashed down at Zhou Wen. It was the Cape family's famous holy light judgment. It was a terrifying essence energy skill that only those with the Cape family's hero bloodline could cultivate. Zhou Wen had seen this move before, but it wasn't as terrifying as it was now. Clearly, John's strength had already risen to the peak of the epic stage. Zhou Wen had no intention of retreating. He also raised his arm and slashed out a blood-colored halo. It was none other than the demonic astral wheel. The blood-colored wheel of light collided with the blade of holy light, causing a terrifying explosion. The blade of holy light and the wheel of light shattered at the same time, forming a shockwave that directly lifted the ground of the arena. The surface of the reinforced concrete structure was like a wave. With just one strike, the ground was destroyed. Not bad. He has already reached the epic stage at this age. He's much stronger than us back then, Zhang Chuanqiu said with a smile. Dugugu nodded slightly. He's indeed very strong. I wonder if he has a mythical companion beast? It's hard to say. And Tianzua is a little terrifying. Perhaps he can get a mythical companion egg for Zhou Wen, Zhang Chuanqiu said. In the arena, John waved his arm and sent out holy light judgment. Such terrifying power seemed to be done casually. Zhou Wen had no intention of drawing his saber. At the same time, he brandished the demonic astral wheel to fight John, shattering the holy light judgment. Dugugu and company originally imagined that such a battle wouldn't last long. This was because holy light judgment consumed a lot of essence energy. Even with the Cape family's hero bloodline, it was impossible to use it repeatedly. Although they had never seen Zhou Wen's essence energy skill before, to be able to resist holy light judgment, it was clearly an essence energy skill that consumed a lot of essence energy. It was similarly impossible to last long. But soon, they were surprised to discover that be it John or Zhou Wen, they could continuously slash out essence energy skills without any signs of essence energy exhaustion. In the blink of an eye, they had slashed out more than 10 holy light judgments and demonic astral wheels. They were still slashing out. The entire fighting arena was in a mess. The terrifying power collided, creating one big pit after another on the ground. Seeing that he couldn't gain the upper hand with holy light judgment, John didn't plan on continuing. He retracted his hand and stared at Zhou Wen. I never expected you to have grown to such an extent. From the looks of it, I underestimated you. Your improvement isn't slow either, but is that all? Zhou Wen said as he stared at John. Although such a continuous burst of essence energy was indeed very powerful, it was nothing to Zhou Wen. If John had really contacted the Tharch, his strength definitely wouldn't be that simple. After all, the Tharch knew that Zhou Wen had 2 mythical pets, Six-Winged and Truth Listener. Under such circumstances, the Tharch still believed that he wasn't John's match and even wanted him to go to Chess Mountain to beg for mercy. No matter how he thought about it, John's strength couldn't be limited to this. Furthermore, Zhou Wen sensed a familiar yet unfamiliar aura from Hardadef. John didn't flare up because of Zhou Wen's provocation. His expression didn't change at all. All he did was raise his head and look up at the sky. Zhou Wen, you were indeed stronger than me in the past. You are indeed a genius. Even I have no choice but to admire you for being able to improve to such a stage in such a short period of time. What you said is true, Zhou Wen said with a smile. John continued expressionlessly, but it's different now. No matter how talented you are or how hard you work, you are ultimately immortal. As for me, I'm a person chosen by God. I will become a god. John's eyes became fanatical, and a terrifying holy radiance rose from his body. Rays of white holy light rose from his body, illuminating the entire arena. Ordinary soldiers couldn't even open their eyes. What's that? A mythical companion beast? When the light weakened, everyone stared at John in the arena in surprise. An angel with 6 wings on its back, exuding a holy light, hovered behind him. When ordinary soldiers saw the 6-winged angel, they had the urge to kneel down and worship it. Dugugu and Zhang Chuanxiu exchanged looks and saw the surprise and excitement in each other's eyes. Clearly, they had realized something. Zhouwen also stared at the 6-winged angel. He also sensed that the 6-winged angel's aura was strange. It wasn't an ordinary companion beast. It was somewhat similar to the creature inside the white cocoon. What a terrifying aura! Is it a mythical companion beast? Xia Xianwei had never seen the creature inside the cocoon, so she naturally didn't know what it was. No, that's an existence even more terrifying than a mythical companion beast, Dugugu said. Could it be? Xia Xianwei immediately guessed what it was. Chapter 533. Hardadef spread his arms as though he was embracing the sky. The 6-winged seraphim transformed into feathers of light that flew towards his body, transforming into angelic armor that enveloped his body. However, the angelic armor seemed to grow on Hardadef's body and had already become a part of his body. 6 angel wings spread out on his back, emitting a holy glow. Coupled with the holy armor and his handsome face, he really looked like a god. Everyone's eyes were focused on Hardadef. Even a blind person could sense the terrifying energy fluctuations from his body. Is that the creature inside the cocoon? It doesn't look like a companion beast, but it seems a little different from ordinary dimensional creatures. Xia Xianwei frowned in thought. Dugugu and Zhang Chuanxiu looked at Hardadef without a word, but the look in their eyes was somewhat odd. And Sheng looked at Zhouwen worriedly. Hardadef's current situation was indeed a little odd. He wasn't sure if Zhouwen could handle it. And Tianzhua looked at the surveillance footage on his phone and frowned. The 6 holy angelic wings on Hardadef's back fluttered slightly as his body floated in the air. He looked coldly at Zhouwen and said, "Zhouwen, I'll tell you now what the difference between a god and a human is." With that said, Hardadef extended his hand and aimed it at Zhouwen. A pillar of light shot out from Hardadef's palm. It was unbelievably fast, as though it was holy light that could destroy everything. Boom! The entire arena exploded with dazzling light, like a volcano erupting. Even the protective barrier was shattered, and the entire arena began to shake. Mythical strength, Dugugu said with a heavy expression. It's indeed mythical strength. Zhang Chuanxiu nodded slightly. Xia Xianwei had a mythical companion beast before, so she knew that the strength of Hardadef's strike was definitely at the mythical stage. She couldn't help but be alarmed. The strength of a mythical stage wasn't surprising, but typically, it was produced through mythical companion beasts. However, Hardadef's strike was completed by himself. It wasn't the power of a companion beast. There was a huge difference. No matter how strong a companion beast was, it was only a tool. It was like a gun, but the person who used it didn't become stronger. But now, the power that John displayed was that he himself had become stronger. Not only had his destructive power increased, but his various physical qualities had also improved to another level. As the explosion dimmed, everyone immediately realized that Zhouwen wasn't injured by the terrifying force. A gigantic white 6-winged dragon appeared in front of him. It was the dragon that had blocked John's strike. 6-winged guardian dragon? So it's Zhouwen's companion beast. Dugugu said in surprise. Xia Xianwei and Zhang Chuanxiu were somewhat surprised. They never expected that the first mythical companion beast on the rankings would belong to Zhouwen. They originally imagined that it was the pet of a local bigwig. In Chess Mountain, the Dharch saw Zhouwen's 6-winged guardian dragon from the video on her phone. She curled her lips and said, It's too naive to think of using a six-winged guardian dragon to fight a guardian. When John saw the six-winged guardian angel, he said coldly, "So that six-winged guardian dragon belongs to you. Unfortunately, even if you have a powerful mythical pet, you can't change your fate of defeat." With that said, John crossed his arms in front of his chest. The 6 wings on his back glowed brightly as a terrifying energy fluctuation condensed once again, erupting with a light wave that was even more terrifying than before. The 6-winged guardian dragon roared as its sanctified body erupted with a blazing white flame that collided with John's light wave. Boom! The two forces collided and exploded. The 6-winged guardian dragon's massive body pulled out a deep ravine on the ground. It retreated more than 10 meters before coming to a stop. The 6-winged guardian dragon roared angrily as it flapped its 6 wings and soared into the sky, charging at John. Hardadef's expression didn't change, but his figure disappeared as though he had teleported. When he appeared again, he was already in front of the 6-winged guardian dragon. His fist, which was filled with terrifying holy light, struck the 6-winged guardian dragon's chin. The 6-winged guardian dragon's massive body was sent flying into the air. Hardadef's figure flickered again as he arrived in front of the rising 6-winged guardian dragon like a beam of light. He punched out expressionlessly, causing the 6-winged guardian dragon to sway as blood spewed out of its mouth. Finally, Hardadef punched it in the head and sent it flying. Bam! The 6-winged guardian dragon's body slammed into the spectator stands, causing half of the arena's stands to collapse. What Sheng was worried about happened. Even the 6-winged guardian dragon was no match for John. John, who was floating in the air, was like a saint that represented a god that had descended to the mortal world. "What do you think?" Dugugu asked Zhang Chuanxiu. "It's very strong, but it's still within the mythical stage," Zhang Chuanxiu said after some thought. Dugugu nodded in agreement before saying, "Unfortunately, Zhou Wen's mythical companion beast has already been defeated. He probably can't continue fighting. It's difficult to force out that thing's full strength. It's indeed a pity." Zhang Chuanxiu also felt that the duel should end here. "I don't think Zhou Wen will admit defeat so easily," Xia Xianyue suddenly said. "Although that 6-winged guardian dragon still has the ability to fight, it's meaningless even if it continues fighting. It will ultimately lose," Dugugu said. He had misunderstood. When Xia Xianyue said that Zhou Wen wouldn't admit defeat, she didn't mean that the 6-winged guardian dragon still had the ability to fight. She was referring to Zhou Wen himself. However, Xia Xianyue knew that it was meaningless to explain now. She didn't say anything and continued watching patiently. "Zhou Wen, do you now know the difference between a god and a human? Even if you can advance to the epic stage, and even if you can have a mythical pet, you are still an ant in front of a god." John wasn't in a hurry to cripple Zhou Wen. He wanted Zhou Wen to fall into complete despair. The 6-winged guardian dragon crawled out of the collapsed pit and roared as it charged forward again. However, Zhou Wen extended his hand and beckoned. The 6-winged guardian dragon transformed into 6 holy flaming dragon wings that appeared behind him. Although the 6-winged guardian dragon still had the ability to fight, its strength, speed, and other aspects were inferior to John's. It was meaningless even if it continued fighting. "I didn't see any god. I only saw a lunatic with greater strength," Zhou Wen said indifferently as he looked at John. His words made Dugugu laugh. "This Zhou Wen is a little interesting. I'm starting to like him a little." Zhang Chuanxiu also said with a smile, "He's right. John's strength has only reached the peak of the mythical stage, but his realm and techniques haven't reached that stage. It's indeed a little too arrogant to say that he's a god. However, sometimes, when the difference in strength reaches a certain level, no matter how stupid the opponent is, it's still very difficult to win." Chapter 534. Zhou Wen's words didn't infuriate Hardadef. Hardadef only sneered and said, Then let's see how strong the lunatic you mentioned is. With that said, Hardadef's figure left a beam of light and instantly appeared in front of Zhou. His palm, which was covered in holy light, grabbed at his neck at an unbelievable speed. The dragon wings on Zhou back flapped as he used his movement technique to dodge Hardadef's palm. However, he had no intention of retaliating. All he did was smile at Hardadef. "Why aren't you drawing your saber?" Hardadef asked as he stared at the bamboo blade at Zhou waist. "If I draw my saber, you will already be defeated. What's the point?" Zhou said seriously. "Now, even I like him a little. I thought only our Zhang family knew how to brag." Zhang Chuanxiu laughed. Upon hearing Zhou's words, Ansheng's tensed heart relaxed significantly, but he was still worried for Zhou. And Tianzhua frowned and muttered to himself, "Arrogant punk." When Hardadef heard that, his pupils constricted, but he didn't flare up in the end. All he did was stare coldly at Zhou and say, "I hope you still have the courage to say that later." With that said, without waiting for Zhou to react, holy light erupted from his body. His 6 angelic wings stretched out horizontally as his body floated in the air like a javelin. He looked like a human-shaped cross as his entire body emitted a terrifying glow. Rays of light swords burst forth from his body, enveloping the entire arena like a torrential rain. Every ray of light contained an unmatched divine power. Zhou's expression didn't change. The 6 wings on his back flapped as his figure gracefully danced in the rain of swords of light. His figure didn't look fast, but he managed to dodge the rainstorm-like rain of swords of light. Rumble! The rain of swords of light landed on the ground, leaving the ground in tatters. Every sword of light had the power of a mythical creature. Zhang Chuanxiu suddenly looked at Dugugu and said, "Could this Zhou be an illegitimate son of your Dugu family?" "What do you mean?" Dugugu asked with a frown. "Otherwise, how could he have such a freakish movement technique? Such a movement technique is probably above the other families. Only your Dugu family can compete with him in terms of movement techniques," Zhang Chuanxiu said. Dugugu stared at Zhou for a while before saying, "His movement technique is indeed very powerful, but it's not something our Dugu family uses." Zhang Chuanxiu nodded and said, "Although Zhou is a little arrogant, what he said just now isn't wrong. Compared to him, John's physique is only slightly better. He's slightly stronger, and his speed is slightly faster. If they were at the same level of physique, I'm afraid John would be beaten down in minutes. The Yin family really picked up a treasure this time. It's no wonder they're willing to offend the Senate to protect Zhou." "That's true, but you and I both know that John's strength is too great. These techniques aren't enough to make up for the gap between them. In such an unequal situation, John can make 100 mistakes and be fine. As long as Zhou makes a single mistake, he might die," Dugugu said seriously. "Let's wait and see. I find this Zhou more and more interesting. It's no wonder he can become friends with my sister," Zhang Chuanxiu said. Your little princess actually has friends?" Dugugu and Xia Xianyue looked at Zhang Chuanxiu with widened eyes as though they had heard something unbelievable. Zhang Chuanxiu seemed to know that he had said something wrong. All he could do was say, "They only met a few times by chance, but their relationship isn't bad. I'm here to see what kind of person Zhou is. You're the one who's worried that Zhou will approach your little princess. You're afraid that he has ulterior motives, so you're here to investigate, right?" Dugugu knew the inside story and said with a twitch of his lip. Zhang Chuanxiu smiled and said, "Don't make it sound so bad. I'm just here to take a look." Seeing that the rain of light swords couldn't injure Zhou, the angel wings on John's back spewed out terrifying flames, propelling his body at high speeds as he slashed at Zhou with terrifying strength. Zhou had no intention of retaliating. All he did was constantly dodge, using his movement technique to dodge John's torrential attacks. Every strike of John's was extremely terrifying, splitting the arena into pieces. The ordinary soldiers guarding here had already retreated from the arena under Ensheng's arrangements and were on standby outside the arena. Only Ensheng and a few epic experts were still guarding the arena. Xia Xianyue and company could only retreat a little to the wall at the back of the arena to prevent themselves from being affected by the terrifying battle. What powerful strength! The strength that six-winged seraphim gave John is really enviable, Zhang Chuanxiu said. No matter how powerful one is, it depends on who uses it. John clearly doesn't have the ability to use such powerful strength. It's a waste. If it were me, I would have long beaten Zhou up, Dugugu said. That might not be the case. Xia Xianyue was somewhat unhappy. Zhouwen's movement technique had advanced with her. If she said that Zhouwen couldn't do it, didn't that mean that she couldn't do it as well? Zhang Chuanxiu praised. Zhouwen's movement technique is really powerful. Under such a huge difference in strength, he isn't injured at all. I've only seen such a movement technique in your Dugu family in the past. Under John's torrential attacks, Zhouwen's figure flew. He didn't look fast, but John didn't even touch the corner of his clothes. John was very calm in the beginning. He wanted to use all sorts of techniques and essence energy skills to hit Zhouwen, but no matter what technique or essence energy skill he used, he couldn't injure Zhouwen at all. Zhouwen, you should be proud to be able to make me use the power that truly belongs to a god. John stopped attacking as a glow flowed in his eyes. 6 angel wings spread out behind him like a blooming flower. Is it finally coming? The smile on Zhang Chuanxiu's face disappeared as he stared at John sternly. Dugu Ji's expression turned solemn as he stared at John without a word. It was the same for Xia Xianyue. They knew very well that the difference between the mythical stage and the epic stage was only one aspect. It was also a relatively unimportant aspect. The true gap between the mythical stage and the epic stage was that the mythical stage had the miraculous power of the Wheel of Destiny. Although every mythical creature's wheel of life was different, they had one thing in common. That miraculous power was something that creatures below the mythical stage couldn't resist. The holy light that erupted from John's body grew stronger and stronger. The 6 angel wings on his back transformed into an ancient door of light. Miracle! Holy Angel's redemption! With John's mighty voice, the door of light behind him slowly opened. Brilliant holy light shot out from the opened door of light. Chapter 535. Zhouwen wanted to dodge, but the light that shot out from the door of light was truly at the speed of light. Unless Zhouwen's speed could reach the speed of light, it was impossible for him to dodge. When the light shone on Zhouwen, his strength erupted. He wore heavy armor and soft armor in a bid to block the light. However, the glorious light didn't harm his body. It only made Zhouwen feel an irresistible force pulling his body towards the door of light. Others only saw Zhouwen fly towards the door of light when he was illuminated by the light. And Sheng's expression changed. Although he didn't know what was inside the door of light, he knew that he couldn't let Zhouwen take the risk. He flew towards the arena. A few epic officers in charge of holding down the fort rushed over with Ensheng. Please stop. I'll admit defeat on Zhouwen's behalf. Ensheng shouted at Hardadef in front of the door of light as he charged at Zhouwen. A cold glint flashed in Hardadef's eyes. The door of light opened and the light shone towards Ensheng and company. Ensheng's eyes focused. At the instant the light scattered, he reached out and pressed on the ground. His body burrowed underground, but the epic officers were illuminated by the light. They couldn't help but fly towards the door of light. No matter how they struggled or resisted, it was useless. As for Ensheng, who had burrowed underground, just as he appeared from the other side, the light from the door of light scattered down and sucked him up. It's over. Hardadef is indeed at the mythical stage. That should be the miraculous power of the Wheel of Destiny, Zhao Chuanxiu said. The creature inside the cocoon can make a person who recently crippled his essence energy become a mythical expert. It's really shocking, Dugugu said after some thought. Xia Xianyue was hesitating, unsure if she should help Zhouwen. Zhouwen tried a few methods, but he failed to escape the power of the light. His body slowly flew towards the door of light. Inside the door of light was a brilliant divine light. Although he couldn't see what was inside, he was certain that there was definitely something terrifying inside. If he was really pulled in, he would probably die. Truth, listeners, evil nullification life, soul didn't work. Zhouwen switched his essence energy art to Tao body and Zero Taboo immediately lit up like a light bulb. Almost at the same time, the irresistible suction force in the light vanished. Zhouwen remained unperturbed as he maintained his slow speed and flew towards the door of light. John, do you really want to kill me? Zhouwen asked. Letting you die like this is already letting you off lightly, John said with a cold expression. If you want to kill me, kill me. They have nothing to do with this. Let them go, Zhouwen said again. They deserve death for protecting you. Furthermore, that Enxing crippled my sister's essence energy see. He naturally has to repay this debt, Hardadef said. In that case, one of us will die today? Zhouwen gripped the bamboo blade tightly. Even if you die, I won't. You don't have the right to talk about life and death with God. Go to heaven in peace. That's where you belong. Hardadef stood in front of the door of light and reached out his palm. He was like an emissary welcoming souls into heaven. I don't plan on going to a place like heaven. Please pass a message to the owner of heaven. Get him to visit me in the mortal world when he has the time. As Zhouwen spoke, he had already arrived in front of the door of light. He suddenly drew his bamboo blade. With all his strength, speed, and primordial energy erupting from this strike, Zhouwen's figure streaked across the void. Hardadef's eyes widened as though he couldn't believe that Zhouwen could still launch an attack amidst the holy angel's redemption. He wanted to move and block the saber. However, he realized that although his eyes saw the saber, his brain's reaction speed couldn't keep up with it. All he could do was watch helplessly as the blade sliced at his neck. His body couldn't move as his expression contorted in horror. Almost at the same time Zhouwen struck out, a white figure with a sanguine beam behind him tore through the air and landed on the outer wall of the arena. It was Tianzhua who had fused with his life soul. Xia Xianyue, Dugugu, and Zhang Chuanxiu also looked at Zhouwen's strike in shock. According to what they knew, in front of the miracle of the Wheel of Destiny, creatures that weren't at the mythical stage shouldn't have the ability to resist. They found it unbelievable that Zhouwen could brandish his saber to attack inside the miracle. Furthermore, that strike was too fast and stunning. It seemed to have exceeded the speed of an epic. Only Xia Xianyue knew that Zhouwen's strike had reached the level of a divine skill. Hardadef was just too close to Zhouwen. Even though he already had the speed of a mythical, he still couldn't dodge Zhouwen's strike. However, she was equally shocked. Even if it was a divine skill, it was impossible for it to violate the miraculous power of the Wheel of Destiny. There had to be another reason why Zhouwen could swing his saber inside the Holy Angel's redemption. Even Xia Xianyue couldn't guess the reason. Wherever the saber beam passed, red blood bloomed like flowers on Hardadef's neck, which wasn't protected by the angelic armor. Hardadef held his neck and stared at Zhouwen in disbelief. The 6 angel wings on his back had already stopped spinning, and the door of light shattered and dissipated. Enxing and company, who had been sucked up by the light, also regained control of their bodies. They landed in the ruined arena and looked at Zhouwen and Hardadef in astonishment. Hardadef held his neck, but blood was still flowing out. He wanted to say something, but when he opened his mouth, he didn't make a sound. Blood surged out. With a ferocious expression, Hardadef suddenly released his hand that was covering his neck and pounced at Zhouwen, as though he wanted to fight him to the death. However, just as he pounced at Zhouwen, the angelic armor on his body automatically dispelled. he transformed back into a six-winged seraph and floated in the air. Having lost the power of the six-winged seraph, Hardadef, who was already severely injured, fell from the sky before he could reach Zhou. Bam! Hardadef fell heavily to the ground and struggled to get up. He stared intently at the six-winged seraph floating in the air, filled with confusion, doubt, anger, indignation, and other emotions. The six-winged seraph he had relied on had betrayed him at the last moment. In the name of an angel, I bestow upon you the right to be protected. Human, are you willing to fight with me and let me be your guardian? The six-winged seraph's words made Hardadef spit out a few mouthfuls of blood. He never expected such a thing to happen. He had abandoned everything to obtain the six-winged seraph guardian, but it had abandoned him and sided with Zhou. Are there any conditions for you to become my guardian? Zhou subconsciously asked when the Thearcha's words flashed through his mind. There are no conditions. As long as you are willing, I will become your guardian and bestow you the power of God, the six-winged seraph answered without hesitation. Hardadef couldn't help but stand up when he heard that. He widened his eyes and pointed at the six-winged seraph in the sky with a trembling finger. He opened his mouth as though he wanted to curse, but when he opened his mouth again, blood spewed out and splattered everywhere. Chapter 536. How do I know if you will treat me like you treat John? Zhou said to the six-winged seraphim. Guardians are born to fight. If you are defeated, what's the point of me not abandoning you? As long as you still have the ability to fight, I will always protect you, the six-winged seraphim said. That makes sense. Then, what should I do to make you my guardian? Zhou asked again. It's very simple. All you need to do is drip a drop of blood on my palm and let me complete the ritual, the six-winged seraphim said as he extended his palm. All right. Zhou cut his finger and extended his hand towards the six-winged seraphim's palm. Just as the blood dripping from his finger was about to land on the six-winged seraphim's palm, Zhou held the bamboo blade in his left hand and slashed at the six-winged seraphim's neck like a bolt of lightning streaking across the void. Clang! The wings on the back of the six-winged seraphim protected his body like an umbrella, blocking Zhou's strike. At the same time, he quickly retreated. Human, you are too emotional. The six-winged seraphim moved back. Zhou slashed out again and again. The six-winged seraphim was different from companion beasts. Companion beasts were completely controlled by their owners, but the six-winged seraphim could abandon their owners. Furthermore, he had his own consciousness. No matter how strong he was, Zhou wouldn't keep him by his side. He had too many secrets. Once the six-winged seraphim betrayed him in the future, those secrets would be exposed. Zhou definitely wouldn't let that happen. Zhou used Transcendent Flying Immortal to kill the six-winged seraphim, but he realized that without John's control, the six-winged seraphim was even stronger than when John used him. His figure moved in the void, leaving behind afterimages. Zhou's Transcendent Flying Immortal could only hit his afterimages. After slashing several times, he failed to touch the six-winged seraphim. Human, you will soon know what you have missed. When the time comes, you will regret everything you have done today. The six-winged seraphim flew backward, but his speed was terrifying. With his 6 wings flapping, he left the arena as though he had teleported and soon vanished. Zhou frowned slightly as he looked at John on the ground. He had already fainted and Ansheng's men were checking his injuries. What do you plan on doing with him? Ansheng walked to Zhou's side and asked. What do you think? Zhou asked. The video of your conversation with him was recorded. Even if you killed him, it would be justifiable defense. The Cape family wouldn't be able to say anything. However, there's no point in killing him. If you don't mind, I hope to let him live and obtain information about the 6-winged seraphim from him, Ansheng whispered. Then do as you see fit. Give me a copy of the intelligence if you get anything. I'll be heading back first, Zhou said as he turned to leave the arena. On the arena's outer wall, Zhang Chuanxiu looked at Tianzhua in his military uniform and said with a smile, "Overseer, and congratulations to your and family for obtaining another valiant general. He's just an ordinary student at Sunset College. He doesn't deserve the title of a fierce general, Brother Zhang." And Tianzhua said indifferently, then said, "If the three of you don't mind, can you come to my place? Coincidentally, I have something to say to the overseer," Zhang Chuanxiu said with a smile. Dugugu and Xia Xianyue also agreed to head over. They roughly knew what Tianzhua wanted to say by inviting them over. To be able to defeat John, who had the protection of a six-winged seraphim, it looks like I've underestimated you. However, why did you reject the six-winged seraphim? Do you know that you missed a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity? Zhou was on his way back to school when the Thearcha's message rang. "What's that six-winged seraphim? I don't think he's a companion beast, but he's different from ordinary dimensional creatures," Zhou asked. "You're right. The six-winged seraphim isn't a companion beast, nor is he a pure dimensional creature. To put it simply, he's a tool," the Tharch replied. "Tool? What tool?" Zhou asked in puzzlement. "Naturally, it's a tool for combat. It's also a tool for you humans to advance to the mythical stage. Due to congenital limitations, you humans basically don't have the ability to advance to the mythical stage. If you want to advance to the mythical stage, you have to obtain a guardian similar to the six-winged seraphim. Only by using the guardian's body can you advance to the mythical stage and continue on your future path. That six-winged seraphim willingly followed you. It's equivalent to giving you a chance to advance to the mythical stage, but you chased him away. Do you regret it now?" The Tharch gloated. "Don't tell me the borrowing of the guardian's body you mention means that the human body won't be able to improve? In the future, it can only strengthen the guardian's body, right?" Zhou acutely sensed something. "Didn't I just say that due to the congenital limitations of your human bodies, it's almost impossible for you to advance to the mythical stage? At most, you can only reach the peak of the epic stage. Guardians are your way out. Don't think that a guardian will betray you so easily. The reason why the six-winged seraphim betrayed John is that John wasn't qualified to form a contract with him. He only used a special method to temporarily form a contract. If it were you, you could really form a contract with the six-winged seraphim. He wouldn't betray you so easily. Do you regret rejecting him now?" "What's a guardian?" Zhou didn't regret it. He only wanted to know what it was. They can be considered the representatives of the various races on Earth. Every race will have a guardian. They will choose a human to rely on and fight with humans to grow. They will help you resist the invasion of dimensional creatures, the Tharch said. The dimensional creatures were created by you to begin with. Why did you say you would help us resist the invasion of dimensional creatures? Zhou cursed inwardly, but he didn't say it out loud. Zhou had a nagging feeling that guardians weren't as simple as the Tharch made them out to be. How many guardians are there on Earth? Zhou thought for a moment and asked. If he knew how many guardians there were, wouldn't he know how many dimensional races there were? I don't know about that, but you can count. Guardians are born from cocoons. Count how many cocoons there are on Earth, and that's how many guardians there are. The Tharch teased Zhou. It's as good as not saying anything. Zhou secretly despised the Tharch. Every time an important question came up, she wouldn't answer properly. However, the Thearcha's words reminded Zhou that the cocoon protected by the white dragon in Old Dragon Cave was gone, but the one in Ant Nest was still there. Perhaps he could have some ideas there. The Ant Nest dungeon that came with the phone seemed to be very special. The other cocoons had terrifying mythical creatures guarding them, but Ant Nest only had a golden flying ant guarding it. This difference was extraordinary. Chapter 537. Are there strong and weak guardians? Zhouwen had a nagging feeling that this six-winged seraphim was slightly weaker than the one he had seen in the ant nest. Different races naturally have strong and weak guardians. Why? Are you interested in guardians? As long as you beg me, I can help you contract a powerful guardian, the Dharch replied. Thank you for your kind intentions. Zhouwen didn't dare get the Dharch to help him when he thought of Hardadef's outcome. Are humans really unable to break through to the mythical stage by themselves? Zhouwen didn't believe the Thearcha's words, but he had indeed never heard of anyone advancing to the mythical stage. After returning to school, Zhouwen began grinding Torch Dragon again. The mythical transcendent flying immortal greatly increased Zhouwen's speed. Although his speed stat was only 40, with the augmentation of transcendent flying immortal, his speed was much faster than six-winged when he used transcendent flying immortal with all his might. However, that burst of speed could only be maintained for a short period of time. He couldn't maintain that speed forever. It wasn't because the essence energy supply couldn't keep up, but because his body couldn't withstand such a huge burden. Using a divine skill at the epic stage was just too much of a burden on his body. After grinding Torch Dragon again, Zhouwen realized that it was much easier. The chances of him blocking or dodging the bright torch vision world were higher. Furthermore, he wasn't as pathetic as before. He easily lasted more than 3 hours and even more than 4 hours. If it wasn't for the fact that Zhouwen was mentally exhausted, he would have been able to last longer. The problem now was that the toughness of Torch Dragon's flesh far exceeded Zhouwen's imagination. Demonic Neonate's ancient sword had stabbed it many times, but it only left some harmless wounds. It wasn't fatal. Torch Dragon had a powerful self-healing ability. The injuries on its body healed itself in battle, so it didn't have much of an effect on it. Zhouwen had also tried using the Poison Dragon Palm to deal with Torch Dragon, but the effects weren't good. Although he left a poison palm mark, it didn't take long for the poison dragon to vanish. It didn't cause the poison to spread in Torch Dragon's body. How can I kill Zhulong? He could finally block Torch Dragon's bright torch vision world, but he couldn't kill it. Zhouwen could only think of another solution. After some thought, it seemed that none of his existing abilities were enough to kill Torch Dragon. Unless demonic neonate advances, there might be a chance of killing Torch Dragon. However, demonic neonate doesn't eat or drink. How can she advance? Zhouwen had fed demonic neonate quite a number of things during this period of time, but she didn't eat anything. Zhouwen was really afraid that she would starve to death. If I can't count on demonic neonate, I can only wait for the fruit of the dead man tree and Tyrant Behemoth. Zhouwen looked at Tyrant Behemoth. It was still evolving, and he didn't know when it would be completed. He couldn't help but worry. As for the dead man tree's fruit, it grew by the day. However, the fruit's appearance made it look like a black-gray grenade. It should be coming out soon. I wonder what kind of companion beast will appear. If it has Life Blast and Curse abilities, I might be able to try and see if it can deal with Torch Dragon. Although Zhouwen had such thoughts, he didn't place all his hopes on this companion beast. Without going to the Zhuolu battlefield, Zhouwen went to the Metalwork Temple. There was a golden trident there, and it was definitely a mythical creature. The companion egg that dropped was most likely in the form of a weapon. Although Overlord Sword was very strong, it was still at the epic stage. It relied on Ever Victorious to injure Torch Dragon. Otherwise, it wouldn't even be able to break through Torch Dragon's skin. Zhouwen felt that he should think of a way to obtain a mythical weapon. With a mythical weapon, the chances of killing Torch Dragon would be much higher. Therefore, he targeted the Golden Trident. The Golden Trident had previously killed the blood-colored avatar once, but Zhouwen felt that there should be a way to crack it. Now, he had no other choice. As he waited for the fruit of the dead man tree and Behemoth to evolve, he thought of a way to kill the Golden Trident. He arrived at the temple again. The moment the door opened, he saw the Golden Trident stabbed into the furnace. golden flames burned its body, but it failed to make its body react at all. Just as Zhou took a glance, he saw the golden trident emit a golden light, as though it was about to engulf the entire metalwork temple in golden light. The blood-colored avatar had been instantly killed by this move the last time. It didn't even have the chance to dodge. However, this time, Zhou brought the strengthened six-winged guardian dragon and summoned it to block in front of him. The six-winged guardian dragon directly sanctified as its body turned as white as jade. Its 6 dragon wings spread out as holy flames burned on its body. It spewed out dragon breath and blocked the golden light in front of Zhou. Boom! The terrifying power collided, causing the entire hall to shake for a moment. Behind six-winged, Zhou saw the golden trident fly out of the furnace and transform into a golden beam of light that blasted at six-winged. Thankfully, its speed wasn't very fast, but it had a domineering aura of supremacy. The 6 dragon wings on the six-winged guardian dragon's back transformed into blades as it slashed at the golden trident that was coming at it. Cracking sounds rang incessantly as the 6 wings collided with the golden trident. The 6 dragon wings were broken by the golden trident. What astonishing destructive power! Zhou wasn't alarmed but delighted. Only such powerful destructive power could kill Torch Dragon. Under Zhou's command, the 6-winged guardian dragon fought the golden trident, but it didn't clash head-on with it. Its speed wasn't as fast as the 6-winged guardian dragon. Although its attack power was domineering, it couldn't do anything to 6-winged if 6-winged didn't fight it head-on. Clang! The 6-winged guardian dragon took advantage of an opportunity and struck out with its 2 front claws, slapping the golden trident down from the sky and pressing it to the ground. Golden light burst out from the golden trident's body as it struggled to escape, but it was held down by 6-winged. It couldn't escape no matter how hard it tried. Although its destructive power was strong, its strength wasn't stronger than 6-wing's. Instantly, the 2 mythical creatures were in a stalemate. One erupted with golden light, while the other spewed out holy flames, causing the temple to tremble. The blood-colored avatar watched the battle from outside the temple. Seeing that although 6-winged had a slight advantage, it couldn't kill it, Zhou gritted his teeth and got the blood-colored avatar to charge in with the Overlord's sword. He brandished the Overlord's sword and slashed at the golden trident. Just as he entered the temple, the divine runes on the blood-colored avatar's heavy armor flickered. In a few moments it collapsed. Thankfully, the blood-colored avatar had already rushed in front of the golden trident. The Overlord's sword slashed down with an intense sword beam. Clang! A loud bang rang out, and a thin mark appeared on the golden trident's body. Chapter 538. The golden trident's body trembled as golden light shot out from it. Zhou hurriedly used his movement technique to dodge and hide behind 6-winged to avoid the golden light's attack. The golden light collided with 6-wing's holy flames, slicing through 6-wing's holy flames. It tore through its scales, leaving behind deep wounds. As expected of a mythical creature in the form of a weapon. This destructive power is truly terrifying. Zhou was secretly alarmed. If he were to be struck by the golden light, 2 layers of armor probably wouldn't be able to withstand it. Unfortunately, no matter how powerful the golden trident's destructive power was, it was still suppressed by 6-wing's claws. It couldn't unleash much of its strength. 6-winged held onto the golden trident tightly, refusing to loosen its claws. Its body was sliced by the golden light, but thankfully, it wasn't fatal. When Zhou saw this, he hurriedly summoned demonic neonate and got her to use the ancient sword to attack the golden trident. 6-winged was good at everything. It could fight, tank, and protect its life. The only bad thing was that it didn't have an offensive wheel of destiny miracle. They were both 6-winged, but the 6-winged seraphim had holy angel's redemption. It was truly a killing machine. However, there were pros and cons. The life-preservation ability of the six-winged guardian dragon was something that the six-winged seraphim didn't have. Otherwise, John wouldn't have had his throat slit. Thankfully, other than the six-winged guardian dragon, Zhou also had demonic neonate, a pet with rather powerful offensive strength. Demonic neonate controlled the ancient sword to find an opportunity to slash at the golden trident again and again. Furthermore, she specifically targeted a spot. She hid behind the six-winged guardian dragon, making her safer than Zhou. Zhou also found various opportunities to slash at the golden trident. The human and two pets worked together in a frenzy, leaving the golden trident riddled with wounds. The deepest spot was about to break in half. The golden trident had already gone berserk. Its entire body flashed with golden light, especially the tip of its spear. There was a resplendent divine glow that seemed to be able to penetrate everything in the world. Unfortunately, it was immobilized by six-winged. The spear tip couldn't touch Zhou and company, so it was useless no matter how much power it unleashed. After slashing for more than half an hour, demonic neonate's ancient sword slashed down again. With a clang, the golden trident was split into two from the middle. Killed mythical creature, golden battle god halberd. Discovered dimensional crystal. Zhou couldn't help but be disappointed when he saw that the golden trident didn't drop a companion egg. On careful look, he saw that the dimensional crystal was a strength plus 80 crystal. It was high enough, but Zhou's strength limit was only 40. He couldn't raise it before breaking through. Zhou picked up the strength crystal and absorbed it. Indeed, his strength remained at 40. He couldn't raise it any further unless he found a way to raise his strength to 41 or advanced to the mythical stage. After killing the golden battle strength, the god guardian dragon's body. Golden god Zhou was. After 2 or 3 battles, Zhou had roughly figured out the golden battle god halberd's situation. Its destructive power was much stronger than the six-winged guardian dragon's. Furthermore, the miraculous power of the Wheel of Destiny was also destructive. If it was hit by the miraculous power, even the six-winged guardian dragon would be penetrated. Its mythical body was like paper. However, the golden battle god halberd's miraculous power wasn't that easy to hit a target. This was because its miraculous power couldn't tear through space to injure the enemy. Only the tip of the trident had a resplendent golden divine light. That golden divine light could almost penetrate everything. It was much more powerful than Overlord swords ever victorious, but it had to be attacked at close range. Zhou was confident that as long as he could drop the golden battle god halberd, he would have an 80% chance of killing Torch Dragon. The only pity was that after the golden battle god halberd was killed, he would have to wait 24 hours before a new golden battle god halberd appeared. He couldn't grind it to his heart's content in one go. He still had to wait. Zhou didn't idle either. Since he couldn't grind the golden battle god halberd, he ran to the Cursed Demon Palace. There was still Medusa there. Although the six-winged guardian dragon wasn't Medusa's match before it was strengthened, it could now fight Medusa for a short while. Now that six-winged had been strengthened, with Zhou and demonic neonate, it had a chance of killing her. After grinding the rare epic creatures, Zhou ran to the Cursed Demon Palace and stormed all the way to the Temple of Medusa. With a gentle touch, the beautiful girl immediately turned into a terrifying demoness. The palace was locked and the blood-colored avatar couldn't leave. All it could do was fight Medusa inside the palace. The six-winged guardian dragon didn't complain as it roared and charged forward. With the sanctification ability, Medusa's ordinary eyes of petrification were much less effective against the six-winged guardian dragon. It could only slightly petrify its skin and didn't affect six-winged much. Zhou's evil nullification could restrain the eyes of petrification, but it could only restrain ordinary eyes of petrification. If he was struck by Medusa's miraculous eyes of petrification, he would still be petrified. Thankfully, the miraculous eyes of petrification would shoot out a corporeal beam of light from her eyes. As long as he dodged the beam, he wouldn't be petrified. If it was like the ordinary eyes of petrification, Zhouwen really wouldn't be able to dodge it. The miraculous eyes of petrification were truly invincible. Even the guardian dragon would be petrified when the light shone on it. It was domineering and unreasonable. What surprised Zhouwen was demonic neonate. This fellow was actually immune to the ordinary eyes of petrification. He didn't see any evil nullification in her skills. The human and two pets worked together to fight Medusa. After expending a great deal of effort, they finally killed Medusa with their swords. Ding! A crisp sound came from the phone, jolting Zhouwen. He saw that Medusa had dropped an essence energy skill dimensional crystal. Inside the crystal-like dimensional crystal was the demoness Medusa's shadow. Another Medusa skill crystal dropped. Unfortunately, my stats aren't high enough. I can't absorb it. Zhouwen was in a dilemma. The requirement of 41 Constitution and 21 Curse stats was just too high for Zhouwen. If he didn't absorb it, the skill crystal would be gone after the dungeon respawned. However, he couldn't absorb it without his stats. In the end, Zhouwen had no choice but to give up on Medusa's skill crystal. After all, he could kill Medusa now. There was still a chance of grinding for skill crystals in the future. Zhouwen heard from Ensheng that the chances of mythical creatures dropping companion eggs and skill crystals were very high. There was about a 1/3 chance. If he grinded for a few days, it shouldn't be difficult to obtain Medusa and the Golden Battle God Halberd companion eggs. Zhouwen rested for a while, and was about to head out to eat something when Ensheng personally came to school and delivered a document. It was filled with John's confession. Zhouwen had already guessed most of the things inside. John had obtained the six-winged seraphim in an ancient cathedral in the West District. However, according to him, there was a terrifying mythical creature guarding the ancient cathedral. He had received a mysterious person's guidance to avoid the mythical creature and obtain the six-winged seraphim in the white cocoon. However, he never expected the six-winged seraphim to betray him. When Zhouwen saw a paragraph of text, his expression turned odd. When Ensheng and company treated John, they realized that John didn't have any male characteristics. Chapter 539. After Ensheng left, Zhouwen continued grinding. It was unknown if his luck had finally come or if he had been grinding too many dungeons, but he managed to obtain another tiger companion egg. Its stats were about the same. It didn't matter if it was higher or lower. He didn't expect it to fight, but the key was that the lucky baby tiger's life providence was useful. However, it was useless to bring two baby tigers. Repeated life providences wouldn't augment his luck. What companion beast should I fuse the baby tiger with? Zhouwen thought to himself. This fusion wasn't easy. If he used the baby tiger as the main pet and used other companion beasts to fuse, it would still be the baby tiger. The life providence produced from the fusion would still be useless. If he used other companion beasts as the main pet and the baby tiger companion egg as a support, the life providence might be the main pet's life providence. Then, the fusion would be meaningless. Therefore, the only fusion method was to use two companion beasts to fuse without distinguishing between the main and supplementary companion beast. Then, the fused companion beast would randomly combine the various stats and skills of the two companion beasts. Even the life providence and life soul might randomly change, just like the silver-winged sky spider. Zhouwen looked at the companion beasts he currently had before looking at their compatibility with the baby tiger. The baby tiger's compatibility with the other companion beasts was surprisingly high. It was basically above 60%, with very few below 60%. Even mythical pets can be fused? Zhouwen realized that the baby tiger's compatibility with the six-winged guardian dragon was as high as 67%. However, when he tried the other mythical pets, it was indicated that he couldn't fuse them. Zhou naturally wouldn't use the baby tiger to fuse with the six-winged guardian dragon. After looking at them one by one, Zhou realized that one of the companion beasts had a 98% compatibility with the baby tiger. However, when he saw the pet stats, a dark cloud hung over Zhou's head. The companion beast that had such a high compatibility with the baby tiger was actually the skeleton general of ancient sovereign city. Strange. One is a skeleton while the other is a beast. Why is the compatibility so high? Zhou looked at the stats of the two companion beasts and felt somewhat hesitant. The skeleton general was a companion egg that Zhou wanted to see if there were any changes in ancient sovereign city in-game after he went to Fire God platform to pull out the stone saber. He entered a few times to grind before a companion egg drop. Its stats were rather good, so he hatched it in passing. He planned on using it for fusion. However, no matter how good its stats were, it was ultimately a legendary companion beast. It was useless to Zhou. There was no need to talk about the baby tiger. It was the weakest among the epic-ranked creatures. Any epic-ranked creature could defeat it. If these two companion beasts were combined, they might even produce a legendary pet that couldn't even reach the epic stage. However, this was the first time Zhou had encountered such a high compatibility. He carefully looked at the attributes of the two companion beasts and steeled his heart. He decided to give it a try. In any case, he only wanted the luck attribute. Levels and skills weren't that important. He chose to fuse the two hatched companion beasts, the baby tiger and the skeleton general. As expected, the fusion succeeded amidst a flash of light. Zhou hurriedly looked at the screen on his phone and saw that the synthesized companion beast still looked like a skeleton general. However, it wasn't riding a skeleton horse, but a skeleton tiger. A skeleton general riding on a skeleton tiger held a bone spear in his hand. He looked quite fierce. Tiger Soul General, Epic Life Providence, Fiend Life Soul, Tiger Soul Strength, 29 Speed, 27 Constitution, 27 Primordial Energy, 24 Talent Skill, Penetrating Spear, Jinx's Master Companion Form. None wears my lucky life providence? What the hell is Jinx's master? Zhou's mind was filled with questions. Zhou was so regretful that his intestines turned green. What the hell were these stats and skills? Ignoring the fact that none of the epic companion beasts had stats exceeding 30, they even had skills that jinxed their owners. Wasn't this jinxing him? The skeleton general and the baby tiger clearly didn't have such a sinister skill, so how did they fuse together? Zhou knew that he had really screwed up this fusion. Not only had he failed to inherit the lucky life providence, but he had also obtained a Jinx's master skill. This pet couldn't be kept. Zhou had a deep impression of the Jinx's husband's skill from before. It was an essential skill for scamming. He casually swiped a companion beast and placed it with the Tiger Soul General. Zhou didn't even look at what companion beast it was. All he saw was that the compatibility was rather low. It wasn't even 10%. He was deliberately trying to destroy the Tiger Soul General. He would rather not have it than keep it to harm him. Although Zhou didn't take a careful look, he roughly knew that the compatibility was only 7%. He thought that he would definitely be doomed, but with a flash of light, a new companion beast was fused. It succeeded? Zhou was alarmed. Although he was somewhat displeased, he still took a look at the pet's appearance. The skeleton tiger and the skeleton general were wearing black heavy armor. Only their faces were exposed. On the black armor, there were dark tiger patterns that resembled magma. It looked extremely domineering. The one I used to fuse just now should be the runic heavy-armored warrior, right? Zhou vaguely remembered that he had casually placed it. It was likely the runic heavy-armored warrior. He couldn't help but look at its stats. Heavy-armored Tiger Soul General, Epic Life Providence, Fiendish Fiend Life Soul, Tiger Soul Divine Rune Strength, 34 Speed, 37 Constitution, 38 essence energy, 36 talent skill. Rampage, penetrating spear, Jinx's master companion form. None these stats aren't bad, but I really can't keep the Jinx's master skill. Zhou searched through his companion beasts, and got him to find one with an even lower compatibility. The Steel Cauldron Fiend that had dropped from the Metalwork Temple was a relatively rare epic companion beast. However, it was too slow and didn't have any offensive means. It was just a half-fire elemental creature that guarded a steel-making furnace. His compatibility with the Tiger Soul General was only 4%. It couldn't be any lower. It was impossible for two companion beasts of different races to have such a low compatibility. He placed the Tiger Soul General and the Steel Cauldron Fiend together and clicked on the fusion button. It should be over now, right? Zhou thought to himself. However, as the light on his phone flashed, Zhou heard the notification of a successful fusion. Looking at the new companion beast on his phone screen, Zhou's mouth gaped open for a long time. He had successfully fused them twice with single-digit compatibility. It was unknown if he was lucky or unlucky. The newly fused companion beast still looked like the heavy-armored Tiger Soul General. However, the heavy-armored tiger and the heavy-armored general's armor were burning with bluish-white flames. They looked even more mighty and domineering, like a demon god that had charged out of hell. Chapter 540. Fiend-Armored Tiger Soul General, Epic Life Providence, Fiendish Fiend Life Soul, Tiger Soul Rune Strength, 39 Speed, 39 Constitution, 40 Essence Energy, 40 Talent Skill. Tempered Steel Cauldron, Rampage, Armor-Piercing Spear, Jinx's Master Companion Form. None this stat. It's about to reach the subtop of epic creatures. Zhou's expression turned odd when he looked at his stats. It had to be said that this fellow's stats were just too good. Apart from the Jinx's master skill, its stat combination was quite impressive. The epic armor-piercing spear was already a powerful offensive skill. There was no need to mention Rampage. It was a charge-type dominance body skill. As for the tempered Steel Cauldron, it wasn't of much use on the Steel Cauldron Fiend. Although it was a fire elemental skill, it couldn't injure anyone. Instead, it burned flames in the Steel Cauldron Fiend's body. Under the calcination of the flames, its steel shell would become harder and harder. It was also a skill that could take a beating. However, this skill was somewhat different on the Fiend-Armored Tiger Soul General. Using the tempered Steel Cauldron while he charged would make the Fiend-Armored Tiger Soul General's Fiend armor harder and harder. In addition to the dominance body effect of Rampage, the armor-piercing ability of Armor-Piercing Spear, and the augmentation of the Tiger Soul runes, there probably weren't many opponents of the same level who could block the Fiend-Armored Tiger Soul General's charge. However, the Jinx's master skill was just too much of an eyesore. Zhou took the Fiend-Armored Tiger Soul General to the Metalwork Temple, hoping to test its actual combat strength. Seeing a few runic heavy-armored warriors wandering in the distance, Zhou ordered the Fiend-Armored Tiger Soul General to charge over. With a command, the tiger beneath the Fiend-Armored Tiger Soul General roared. Blue-white flames burned on its body as the magma patterns on the black heavy armor turned a strange orange-white color. Like a devil, it charged at the runic heavy-armored warriors. Bam! With the augmentation of a powerful essence energy skill, the Fiend-Armored Tiger Soul General sent the few runic heavy-armored warriors flying. The runic heavy-armored warrior that was hit by the spear was pierced in the chest by the bone spear. He slammed into the metal wall before being lifted up by the Tiger Soul General and shattered in the air. Then, Zhou saw a shocking scene. They were both at the epic stage and focused on defense, but the Fiend-Armored Tiger Soul General charged forward as though he was invincible. He killed the runic heavy-armored warriors one by one like a demon god descending to the mortal world. What was even more terrifying was that the Fiend-Armored Tiger Soul General's essence energy seemed endless. It supported the tempered Steel Cauldron's flames in his body, causing the defense of the Fiend-Armored Tiger Soul General and the Fiend-Armored Tiger Soul General's heavy armor to become stronger. Even the Tiger's soul runes on them glowed brighter as they fought. Zhou got him to charge forward as the Fiend-Armored Tiger Soul General swept through everything. He wasn't afraid of being surrounded by many epic creatures. Instead, he became more and more ferocious. He charged and trampled through the dimensional creatures as though there was no one around. Despite being at the epic stage, the heavy-armored Tiger Soul General's charge shattered the runic heavy-armored warriors' heavy armor and killed them on the spot. A fire furnace queen appeared and threw out the furnace's flames, turning the hall into a sea of fire. However, the Fiend-Armored Tiger Soul General wasn't afraid at all. He rode the tiger and charged into the sea of fire. The demonic runes and flames on his body flickered as he stabbed the fire furnace queen with his spear. Fierce. It's just too fierce. Zhou was dumbfounded. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that this fellow was the most ferocious pet at the epic stage. Zhou had never seen such a ferocious epic creature. Even the mutated demon general with 3 skills was much inferior to the Fiend-Armored Tiger Soul General. However, as the dimensional creatures were killed, the tempered steel furnace's flames on the Fiend-Armored Soul General's body gradually dimmed. His aura and strength seemed to weaken as he slowly returned to his normal level. Zhou found it odd. After trying a few times, he realized that this fellow was a war machine. He needed to constantly fight and kill to have infinite primordial energy. The more he killed, the stronger his various abilities would become, especially with the augmentation of the 100 refinement steel furnace. Due to the limited essence energy of the steel cauldron fiend, the time it used the tempered steel furnace was very short. However, on the Fiend-Armored Tiger Soul General, it could continue on forever, making his heavy armor harder and harder. The Tiger Soul runes on the heavy armor also became more and more powerful. Zhou studied it for a while and roughly understood that his life providence, life soul, and skills worked together perfectly. It allowed him to become stronger the more he killed. All 3 were indispensable. This is indeed a good pet, but why haven't I removed this Jinx's master skill after combining it so many times? Zhou was somewhat conflicted. It was a good pet, but Zhou was still afraid when it came to Jinx's master. He had learned his lesson from Ghost King's mistakes. He didn't want to be tricked by the Fiend-Armored Tiger Soul General at a critical moment. When that happened, it would be too late for him to cry. However, the Fiend-Armored Tiger Soul General was such a powerful companion beast. Zhou couldn't bear to destroy it now. After some thought, Zhou decided to fuse again. However, this time, he didn't deliberately choose companion beasts with low success rate. Instead, he chose a companion egg with a high success rate to fuse with to see if he could eliminate the Jinx's master skill. If he could eliminate it, there definitely wouldn't be many companion beasts like the Fiend-Armored Tiger Soul General by his side. However, if he couldn't eliminate it, Zhou would rather destroy him than keep him by his side. What pet should I use to fuse with it? Zhou wasn't that rash this time as he carefully chose. There were a total of 6 epic companion eggs that had a compatibility score of more than 60 with the Fiend-Armored Tiger Soul General. Ignoring the ones with poor skills and life providences, Zhou was relatively satisfied with 3. After some consideration, Zhou finally chose a companion egg that dropped from the Cursed Demon Palace. The epic petrified beast stats were more inclined towards constitution and strength. Its speed was relatively poor, and its life providence and life soul were relatively ordinary. The only advantage was that it had an essence energy skill that was very compatible with the Fiend-Armored Tiger Soul General. This essence energy skill, known as the Magic Stone Curse, wasn't actually considered strong on the petrified beast. The Magic Stone Curse wasn't used on enemies, but on oneself. After using the Magic Stone Curse, one's skin and bones would become as hard as stone, which also increased one's defense. Apart from that, the Magic Stone Curse had another effect. Once it was used, others would be affected by the magic stone curse when attacking the petrified beast's body. Their bodies would also show signs of petrification. However, it was different from the petrified beast's enhanced defense. When others were affected by the power of petrification, their bodies would stiffen and their movements would slow down. It was even possible for them to turn into a stone statue like Medusa's eyes of petrification. Of course, the effects of the magic stone curse were far inferior to the eyes of petrification. Unless one was injured by the magic stone curse multiple times, it would be completely petrified. Furthermore, the petrification effect wasn't permanent. There was a certain time limit. Zhou thought that if the magic stone curse could replace the Jinx's master skill, the fiend armored tiger soul general with 4 skills would be invincible. Not only would it become stronger the more it fought, but it could also reflect attacks and produce a curse effect. Chapter 541. The fusion this time was done with the petrified lion companion egg as support. Only then could it preserve the fiend-armored tiger soul general's life providence and life soul to the greatest extent. However, such a fusion was also risky. It was possible that the skills he needed would be replaced, while the skills he didn't need would be left behind. In order to minimize this risk, Zhou specially went to the Cursed Demon Palace to grind for the Petrified Lion Companion Egg. He obtained a Petrified Lion Companion Egg with a single Magic Stone Curse skill before fusing it with the Fiend Armored Tiger Soul General to minimize the negative consequences of having multiple skills. After placing the Petrified Lion Companion Egg, Zhou felt a little nervous. After all, the chances of Magic Stone Curse replacing Jinx's husband were relatively low. The game glowed brightly as the Fiend Armored Tiger Soul General Fusion succeeded. Zhou hurriedly looked at his stats. The Life Providence and Life Soul hadn't changed, and his Strength stat had increased to 40 points. Only his Speed stat remained at 39. Apart from mythical pets, few pets could match this stat. Zhou's gaze quickly moved down and saw the skill column. Tempered Steel Cauldron, Rampage, Armor-Piercing Spear, Magic Stone Curse. Zhou's heart was about to soar, but when he saw the words, Jinx's Master, behind it, his soaring heart immediately plummeted. I've already fused a few times. Why is the Jinx's Master skill still there? Zhou felt like crying. 4 skills was already the limit of ordinary companion beasts. Although fusion had a chance of breaking through to 4 skills, the chances weren't high. In the end, even with the low chance of 5 skills, Jinx's Master still didn't drop. Fuse again. I have to fuse again. Although the Fiend Armored Tiger Soul General could be said to be a perfect epic pet, Zhou definitely couldn't keep it alive with this Jinx's Master skill. What else should I fuse with it? Zhou was in a dilemma. As the skill already had the Magic Stone Curse, using the Petrified Lion to fuse it would probably replace the Magic Stone Curse. It would be very difficult to eliminate the Jinx's Master skill. Zhou had no choice but to choose one of the remaining companion beasts that had a higher fusion rate. He didn't care if the skill was suitable or not. He fused it first. If he could eliminate Jinx's Master, the skill could be slowly fused. This time, it was a petrified knight with multiple skills. Legend had it that these warriors came to defeat Medusa, but they were petrified by Medusa and turned into puppets. Zhou steeled his heart and took a petrified knight companion egg with 4 skills to fuse. The 4 skills of the petrified knight and the 5 skills of the Fiend Armored Tiger Soul General made a total of 9 skills. He would definitely eliminate a few skills, hoping to eliminate Jinx's Master. He placed the Fiend Armored Tiger Soul General and the Petrified Knight Companion Egg together, and clicked the fusion button. 1 pet and 1 egg shone brilliantly, fusing together. With a crisp sound, the light dissipated and the Fiend Armored Tiger Soul General appeared again. The fusion had succeeded again. Zhou hurriedly looked at the Fiend Armored Tiger Soul General stats and realized that all 4 stats had reached the maximum of 40 points. If he wasn't a mythical creature, he wouldn't be able to raise it to 41. His life providence and life soul did not change. They were still ferocious fiend and tiger soul runes. When he arrived at the skill column, Zhou looked through them one by one, feeling a little nervous. Tempered steel cauldron, rampage, armor-piercing spear, magic stone curse, man and mount as one. Jinx's master. Zhou was dumbfounded. He had fused another skill, but Jinx's master was still there. Zhou looked at the fiend-armored tiger soul general with mixed emotions. He was momentarily at a loss for a reaction. This fellow's stats and skills were already the best of the best. It could be said that apart from mythical pets, it was difficult to find a pet that was better than it. But this Jinx's the master. Zhou didn't have the confidence. Perhaps it was because he had fused too many times, but when Zhou looked at the compatibility, he realized that the fiend-armored tiger soul general's compatibility with the other companion beasts was much lower. Some that originally had a compatibility of 60 to 70 had dropped to about 30 to 40. Most of them were below 10. With such compatibility, the chances of it exploding will be too high if I continue fusing. Zhou gritted his teeth and found the one with the highest compatibility. He would rather explode than keep it for Jinx's master. Although it was already the highest, it only had a compatibility of 42. The success rate was about 40%. Just as Zhou was about to press the fuse button, he suddenly heard his phone ring. He picked up his phone and saw that it was from Enxing. He picked up the call with one hand and was about to press the fuse button with the other. Young Master One, there's news from Zhuolu again. After the experts' research, they have confirmed Qiongqi's identity and proposed some plans. Enxing said. When Zhou heard Qiongqi's name, an idea suddenly flashed through his mind. His hand that was about to press the button stopped. Zhou remembered that he had heard from the Dharch that if he wanted to defeat Qiongqi, it was best to let a ferocious bad person do it. If he let a good person do it, the chances of killing Qiongqi would be very low. Although Zhou didn't know why such a strange thing would happen, the fiend-armored tiger soul general's life providence was fiendish. Was he considered a ferocious bad person? With this thought in mind, he couldn't press the button no matter what. Enxing told Zhou the results of the experts' research. When Zhou heard that, he felt that their research was rather impressive. He had determined the few skills of Qiongqi. However, this didn't have a decisive effect on killing Qiongqi. What was truly terrifying about Qiongqi wasn't just those few skills. The experts had also mentioned that Qiongqi liked to bully kind people, but they believed that it was only a legendary personality of Qiongqi. No one expected that this personality could be used. After Enxing hung up, Zhou looked at the fiend-armored tiger soul general with a complicated expression. In the end, he decided not to fuse it for now. He would first take him to fight Qiongqi to see if it would be of any use. After entering the Zhuolu ruins, Zhou didn't go to Torch Dragon. After killing the Aoyin stone statue, he went to Qiongqi. The moment the temple's door opened, Zhou summoned his companion beasts. The six-winged guardian dragon was right in front while the other companion beasts followed behind. Among them was the fiend-armored tiger soul general. The six-winged guardian dragon pounced at Qiongqi, and Qiongqi charged forward like before. Something unexpected happened to Zhou. Today, Qiongqi seemed to have not eaten its fill. Be it its strength, speed, or the release of various skills, it felt like it had weakened significantly. The six-winged guardian dragon, which could only be suppressed by Qiongqi, was actually on par with Qiongqi. The fiendish life providence is actually useful? Zhou was dumbfounded. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.